Part 9. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. It had been an enjoyable 3 weeks for the 4 figures that now stood at the massive gates of the village. Naruto had treated all 3 of them to separate dates throughout the week, though his date with Koyuki had garnered the most attention from the populace. Though the 2 of them should have expected that, since it was their own daimyo out with a young man in an intimate manner. However, since the young man in question was viewed as a hero throughout the land, many had rejoiced at the fact that the young princess had landed such a fine young man. Aside from treating his girls, Naruto had also managed to sneak away for a few hours alone and acquired some souvenirs. A few that would be very special to a few of his girls in the very near future. Do you two really have to go? Koyuki huffed, earning a small chuckle from the blonde Hanyu. I'm afraid so, Koyuki-hime. Naruto replied as he cupped her cheek in an affectionate manner, prompting her to lean into his touch. We've already been here for 3 weeks, not to mention both Sakura-chan and I have to be ready for the Chunin exams that starts in another 3 weeks. Koyuki merely nodded sadly, still not wanting her mate to go. Cheer up, Koyuki-chan, Sakura smiled, catching the princess's attention. You'll get to see us again during the finals, then you can meet the other girls. At this, the young ruler couldn't help but smile. Since hearing about the other girls that were in her mate's life, she had been interested in meeting with them. Especially the one named Anko, whom she had learned from Sakura was Naruto's first mate, and no doubt had interesting tales to tell of the blonde Hanyu. Fubuki on the other hand was interested in meeting with Haku, and compare Hyoten jutsus. We'll be there, Fubuki stated with a small smile. Naruto-kun, Koyuki blushed. Could you perhaps make a stop at the port we departed from in Tetsu no Kuni, and give these to those 2 children? In her hand were 2 autographed posters of the upcoming movie both of them were in, though these particular poster only showcased the demon queen that Koyuki had portrayed in the film. Smiling, Naruto gently took them. As you wish, he replied. With one last bid farewell, the blonde embraced both of the girls into a firm hug, planting a kiss on each of their cheeks before he returned to his teammate, before finally sinking into the shadows to make their first stop to drop off the autographed posters for the children before heading home. Konoha Gates, a few hours later. It had been a dull afternoon for the Eternal Gate guards. Even more so for Izumo since Kakashi had borrowed his book and had yet to return it, which caused the brown-haired Chunin to grumble in complaint. With little else to do, the man blankly stared at the long path that led into the village, squinting slightly as he saw 2 figures approaching the gates at a leisurely pace. As the 2 travelers neared, Izumo could finally make out the distinct pink and blonde-haired individuals with black low lights. Hey Katetsu, look who it is, he called out to his partner and best friend while gesturing at the approaching duo. So they're finally back, the other Chunin chuckled. Kakashi is going to be happy when he learns of this. Maybe I'll finally get my book back. Izumo grumbled again, earning another laugh from his friend. Welcome back, Naruto. Katetsu greeted the blonde as him and Sakura finally reached the massive gates. And Sakura, still haven't moved up in rank, I see. The blonde Hanyu teased the 2 guards. I swear, I am going to make Jonin before you 2 do. Why move up when we're comfortable right here? Izumo shot back with a laugh. Exactly, his best friend agreed as he signed in the 2 returning genin. Pay is good, the missions are safe, and we are the first to meet new people entering our village. You 2 do make a good argument for your laziness. Naruto grinned. Anyways, we need to check in with the old man, try not to work too hard. Their banter done, Naruto and Sakura departed for the Hokage Tower to deliver the scroll to finalize the alliance between the 2 countries and give their own oral report of what had transpired after Kakashi and Sasuke had left, leaving the Eternal Gate guards to their work, or rather, lack thereof. Though both had agreed that Naruto's part in the movie would remain a surprise for the old man. It only took the 2 Hanyu a handful of minutes to cross the village, via rooftop, and arrive at their destination. Ignoring the glares sent his way from the secretary, Naruto quickly made his way up the flight of stairs, with his pink-haired mate right behind him. Arriving at a large pair of wooden doors, the blonde knocked before entering. Ah, Naruto-kun, Sakura-chan. Hiruzen smiled as he saw the 2 genin. You're back. Yep, the blonde replied with a grin. And as you know, mission was a success. Here are the documents to finalize the alliance between Konoha and Haru no Kuni. Taking the scrolls, Hiruzen opened them up and began reading over the treaty that had been drawn up. looking over the various trade proposals, taxation, and the usual boring, though important bits of detail regarding the overall treaty and partnership. However, the elder village leader's eyes nearly popped out of their sockets when he read the last bit of the treaty. A political marriage between one Koyuki Kazuhana with one Naruto Uzumaki. I wonder if this is what the princess had in mind when she requested the two of them to stay behind. The Hokage couldn't help but wonder. Looking up, he could see Naruto sheepishly scratching the back of his head, while Sakura was struggling, and failing, to hold in a tirade of giggles. Are you going to leave any women for the rest of the male population, Naruto-kun? Hiruzen couldn't help but tease his surrogate grandson. Maybe. The blonde in question shrugged. It wasn't as if he went out of his way to seduce the women who were interested in him, he merely did what he thought was right. So how have things been here in the village, council still giving you a hard time? Well, some were less than pleased to learn that Sasuke has been banned from Haru no Kuni. Hiruzen sighed, rubbing his temples at the reminder of that particular headache. Those still firmly in the boys' camp have been trying non-stop to come up with a means to have him allowed back into the country. Even going as far as to offer him in a political marriage. Though thankfully, his supporters on the council have dwindled since the CRA fiasco. Well, those idiots are going to hate the fact that Koyuki Haim is engaged to me now. Naruto stated with a slight chuckle as he imagined the three elders blowing a gasket when they inevitably learned of the blonde Hanyu's relationship with the princess they desired to present their vaunted Uchiha to. Speaking of which, could you summon Anko-chan for me, GG? Very well. Though I also need to summon Kakashi as well now that you're back. The Hokage stated, earning a nod from the blonde. Good, I want an audience for what I am planning. Naruto grinned, earning a chuckle from Sakura and a raised eyebrow from the elder village leader. Very well, Neko, he called out. Immediately the female Anbu appeared in front of his desk, standing at attention. Have Kakashi and Anko report to my office immediately, please. With a quick nod, the purple-haired Anbu disappeared in a swirl of leaves to carry out her orders. Though not before giving her blonde maid a quick nod in greeting, which the young Hanyu returned. A handful of minutes passed before the requested figures were present, with Anko immediately jumping and latching onto Naruto with a deep kiss, having missed him due to his mission that had extended to over a month. However, what stood out to both Sakura and Naruto was the book their sensei now had his nose buried in. Ahem. Hiruzen coughed, catching Anko and Naruto's attention, breaking them out of their impromptu make-out session, though the snake mistress was about to open her mouth to say something before Hiruzen cut her off. And before you ask Anko, you may not borrow my desk for a few hours. Damn, she muttered in disappointment, earning a series of blushes and perverted giggling from the other occupants in the room. Moving on, Kakashi Hatake. The elder man began, prompting the masked Jonin to lower the book he was reading and focused his attention towards the Hokage. As Naruto-kun and Sakura-chan have returned, you are now released from your punishment. Kakashi merely nodded in acknowledgement, though both Naruto and Sakura looked confused. Seeing this, the masked Jonin explained. Due to my negligence and mishandling of the latest mission, I was temporarily demoted and assigned gate duty, as well as being banned from reading my Ika books. Well, that explains why you were reading Demon Heart. Sakura commented with a small giggle, prompting the silver-haired Jonin to sheepishly scratch the back of his head. Anyways, Naruto, Sakura. Kakashi began. I have not been the sensei you needed me to be. So much so that Naruto had taken over your training, Sakura, and turning you into a respectable kunoichi. For that, I apologize for my blatant favoritism I played over my students. Sakura, Anko, and Naruto were all a bit taken aback by the Jonin's apology. With his actions in the past regarding the vaunted Uchiha, the three Hanyu were not expecting such an apology from the silver-haired man, let alone admittance that he was in the wrong. However, Naruto could feel no deceit in his voice. Turning to look at his pink-haired mate, whom nodded in acceptance, Naruto turned his attention towards the now bowing form of Kakashi. Apology accepted, Tada-sensei, he grinned. Though I think it should be fitting if the three of us at least start over with introduction this weekend. Why over the weekend? Kakashi inquired, earning himself a pointed look from Anko and unknown to him, Yugao as well. Because I have been gone for over a month. Naruto deadpanned. I do believe my girls would love to spend some time with me. Damn straight, and we're making up for lost time. Anko grumbled, crossing her arms over her chest with a cute pout. Speaking of which, Anko-chan. Naruto smiled as he turned towards his snake mistress, feeling a sense of anxiety and nervousness falling over his first mate. Reaching into his pocket, he grabbed the item he desired, and slowly dropped to one knee in front of the usually energetic snake mistress, who now had her hands covering her mouth as tears began to pool around her brown eyes, and presented the now open box towards the purple-haired Hanyu, exposing an intricately designed ring that appeared to be a snake coiling around the stand, with its mouth holding a blood-red ruby. "Anko-chan, my hubby Harem," Naruto began with a smile as he looked up at his mate. "You've been with me since the beginning, and I want you to be with me until the end of time as my love and my mate. What I am asking, is will you marry me?" "Yes," she exclaimed as she allowed her blonde mate to slide the ring onto her left-hand ring finger, while tears streamed down her face. Pulling Naruto up and engulfing him in a firm hug as her lips hungrily claimed his as she continued to cry due to the swirl of emotions she was feeling. After a few minutes had passed, Anko had finally reined in her emotions, though she was still sniffling slightly before she cast a glare towards the other two men in the room. "You two saw nothing," she hissed threateningly. "If I hear so much as a peep from either of you about this, I swear, I will hang you both by your intestines and beat you like I am playing suikawari. Are we clear?" "Crystal," Hiruzen gulped, while Kakashi merely silently nodded in agreement. "Anyways, Kakashi, you and your team have a week off starting tomorrow. Be sure to let Genin Uchiha know." "It will be done, Lord Hokage." Kakashi bowed. "Very well, dismissed," the village elder stated. With a nod, Kakashi bid his two returning students farewell and disappeared in a swirl of leaves to relay the message to the Uchiha boy, whom was no doubt still knee-deep in dog shit. "Is there something else you needed, Naruto-kun?" Hiruzen inquired, seeing as the blonde and Sakura had yet to leave his office. "Actually there is," Naruto stated as he glanced at his pink-haired mate. "I would like to request that Anko-chan and myself take Sakura-chan out tomorrow afternoon to get blooded." "I see no problem with it, but why not?" asked Kakashi. While his apology is sincere, having your first kill is best done with someone you fully trust, Naruto pointed out, and I doubt I need to recount our past experiences with our sensei. Point taken. Hiruzen nodded in agreement, knowing full well that taking your first life was mentally draining and emotionally challenging and is usually best done with those you care about and have a mutual trust with as backup. It also helped to be with those who you love, and given the blonde's relationship with the pink-haired Kunoichi, it really was best to send them out as a team. Which gave him an idea. "Very well, tomorrow I am going to send you three along with Team 8, and Neko to clear out a few bandit camps just north of the village." "Understood GG, Hokage-sama." Both Naruto and Sakura replied, with Anko giving her own mock salute. "Well, shall we, Mrs. Uzumaki?" Naruto asked his now official fiancée with a smile, extending his hand towards her. With a grin of her own, she took his hand into her own and led the blonde from the office with Sakura behind them, chuckling at her sister-wife's antics. Uzumaki compound. 1 hour later. "We're home," Anko called out as the trio entered the compound. They would have arrived sooner, but Naruto had decided to stop by and get some ramen, and visit with Ayame. Knowing the ramen queen would punish him severely if he didn't let her know he was back. While the blonde Hanyu did that, Sakura had reluctantly stopped by her mother's home, if only to keep up appearances. Fortunately for the Pinkett, her mother was still preoccupied with the mess her brother-in-law had created, allowing the pink-haired Hanyu to let her mother know she was back in the village, and disappear without any resistance or unwanted encouragement to pursue the last Uchiha. "Welcome home, Naruto-kun." Haku smiled as she came to greet them, followed by Yakumo and Izumi. The ice mistress planting a loving kiss on the blonde's lips, prompting the other two girls to blush at the display of affection. "Hana-chan, Hinata-chan, Ayame-chan, Yugao-chan, and Hanabi-chan should be by later this evening for dinner." Haku informed her mate. "Yeah, I stopped by and let Ayame-chan know I was back." Naruto chuckled before her turned his attention to the other two women standing there. "Izumi-chan, please allow me to formally welcome you to my home," the blonde stated, causing the fallen Uchiha girl to blush, though offered him a shy smile nonetheless. "Give me a few moments to settle in, and I will remove that seal from the back of your neck." Thank you," the raven-haired woman replied, feeling a sense of warmth in her chest as she looked upon her blonde host. Despite her initial mission to investigate and neutralize the blonde boy, he had been forgiving and friendly towards her. Even his girls, his mates as he called them, had helped her when she needed someone the most. "And how are you settling in, Yakumo-chan?" Naruto turned his attention towards the budding genjutsu mistress. I am doing fine, Naruto-kun. She smiled with a faint blush. Kurenai-sensei has been stopping frequently to continue my training in genjutsu, and I have made a new friend in Izumi-chan. That's good to hear, he smiled. He was proud of his two new house guests, that despite the history between the two girls, albeit not of their own volition, that they had managed to put the past behind them without his intervention and form a true friendship with one another. Something he knew both of them needed desperately. With Yakumo being ostracized from her own clan, and Izumi being mentally conditioned from her time en route. Anyways, I am going to unpack and get settled in. The blonde notified the girls. Yakumo-chan, could you please bring Izumi-chan to the ceiling room? Of course, Naruto-kun. Yakumo replied before turning and leading the former root member towards the room that the blonde had helped her settle her issues with her own inner demon at the time. Though, with how Ito had continued to tease her over her growing crush on the young teen, she was beginning to doubt her choice to accept the demon as a part of her. It didn't take long for Naruto to unpack, mainly because he cheated and had his shadow clones do it, while he made his way through the compound towards the ceiling room. He wanted to get that seal off of Izumi as soon as possible, not knowing if it could still be activated or not, and he really didn't want to take any chances. Arriving, he was met with both girls sitting idly and chatting with one another, their backs to the door. The subject matter was of himself, of course, causing him to smirk as neither had realized he had arrived yet. Any ideas? Izumi asked the budding genjutsu mistress, as both girls were trying to plan on how to approach their host, and in both of their cases, their savior, about their growing crushes on the blonde. Though both were thankful that the blonde was part of the clan restoration act. Otherwise their newly found friendship in each other would have no doubt come to an abrupt halt. Well, if we go by what Anko-chan suggested, we simply tie him to the bed and have our way with him. Yakumo stated bluntly with a slight blush, as the snake mistress was very descriptive in what they should do to lay claim to the blonde Hanyu. Though, Haku-chan has stated that Naruto-kun likes to let us set the pace, with her being the only exception due to the Uchiha Tem trying to lay claim to her. No offense, none taken. The Uchiha girl chuckled slightly. I am only a Uchiha in name anyways, since I can't even use my Sharingan for long periods of time without falling to chakra exhaustion. This caused the brunette Uchiha to frown slightly. Due to her father not being from the clan, her ability to utilize the clan's famed dojutsu. However, this also made her less reliant on it, allowing her to grow in other areas, unlike most Uchiha. During her time observing potential recruits for Root, she had witnessed how arrogant the official, sole survivor of the Uchiha massacre was, despite not having activated his Sharingan at the time. She could only surmise how worse he has gotten since activating it. Deciding to let himself be known, Naruto entered the room silently and draped his arms over both of the girls, causing them to stiffen as the blushes on their faces deepened. How about next week I take you both on a date so we can sit down and get to know each other? He inquired. But what about Danzo Tem? Yakumo asked, fearing that the man and his root Anbu would attempt something if she left the compound, with Izumi mirroring the other girl's thoughts. You will be safe with me. Naruto reassured both of them. Besides, the old man is a coward, he won't try anything out in the open like that. It's not his style, he prefers to move in the shadows. I agree, he hates to bring attention unto himself unless he is being praised for something. Izumi pointed out. Anyways, let's get that seal off of you. Nodding, Izumi moved her hair out of the way, exposing the seal that was on the back of her neck. Upon seeing it, Naruto immediately knew why it didn't work as it should. Which was probably the reason the young woman had any sense of personality when he had first run into her. A simple stroke was missing from the seal. So small, so easily overlooked. However, seeing the seal added on to his original idea to make a counter seal to combat the effects of such seals, and potentially other styles of mental manipulations. Taking a sheet of fuinjutsu paper, he applied it to the back of her neck. You're going to feel a slight burning sensation, he warned. Receiving a nod, he began to apply his chakra to the paper. In doing so, Izumi grit her teeth as she felt the back of her neck heating up. As he had told her, it felt like the skin on the back of her neck was being melted away. Though as quickly as it began, it stopped as seemingly foreign thoughts flooded her mind, all with a renewed hatred towards the bandaged man that had taken advantage of her vulnerability. The burning feeling now replaced with a cooling sensation. And done, he smiled, showing her the piece of paper that now held the seal that was once on the back of her neck. Getting up from her sitting position, Izumi turned and bowed towards the blonde, showing her thanks. However, she was surprised when the blonde brought her into a comforting hug. Freezing up for only a split second before she buried her face into the crook of his neck and let her tears fall freely as she wrapped her arms around him. "It's all right, let it all out," he cooed, as he combed his fingers through her hair. Knowing that the Uchiha girl was feeling a swirl of emotions, since part of the seal he had removed had dampened her ability to feel any emotion fully. After a few moments, her sniffling began to die down, allowing her to pull away. Her eyes stained red from crying. Though before the blonde Hanyu could ask how she was feeling, Izumi snaked her arms around his neck and brought him in for a deep kiss, catching both Naruto and Yakumo off guard at her sudden boldness, the later feeling a sense of jealousy that the Uchiha girl had been so daring in front of her. Naruto, however, gladly returned her kiss, eliciting a small moan from the girl. "So, how about next Thursday at 6? Izumi smiled shyly after breaking the kiss, not believing that she had actually done that. "It's a date then," he smiled before turning to Yakumo, whom still sported a healthy blush due to what she had just witnessed. "Does Friday night sound good for you, Yakumo-chan?" Not trusting her voice, the young genjutsu mistress simply nodded her head. Naruto-kun, what are you going to do with the seal?" Izumi spoke up, noticing that the blonde had yet to destroy the paper that now held the seal. "I'm going to study it, and work on making a counter-seal to prevent mental manipulation," Naruto explained. "Hopefully, I can make it so it blocks all forms, be it from seals or jutsus, or even dojutsus." Both Izumi and Yakumo couldn't help but smile at the young teen's resolve. Both having been victims of such seals could see the value in being able to have a counter-seal to protect not only them, but others from being forced to act against their will. "Come, let us relax and enjoy the rest of the night," Naruto stated as he led the two girls out of the room to join the rest of the girls that had gathered in the living room area, while Naruto himself disappeared into his own bedroom to get some much-needed rest before evening fell over the compound. The blonde Hanyu knew he was going to need every minute of rest he could gather, as Anko had made it very clear that she wanted her Foxy-kun time, and she was set on making up for lost time. All while teasing his pink-haired mate that she had been monopolizing him due to being on the same team as him and have back-to-back long-term missions outside of the village. Though, underneath all the teasing that Anko was dishing out towards Sakura, there was an underlying sense of affection in the snake mistress's voice. The next afternoon, Sakura, Anko, Naruto, Yugao, and teammate all found themselves standing in front of the Hokage's desk. Though both Kiba and Shino were unaware as to why they were summoned before the village leader. Hinata, on the other hand, knew, and as a result was feeling a little anxious as her demon blood screamed out for her to indulge in what was to come. Though it was not missed by anyone in the room that the Inuzuka boy was glaring at Naruto, since Hyuga Arisen snuggled up next to him in a very Anko-like manner. "Damn Doby, not only does he have my mate, but also my sister." The feral boy mentally seethed, despising the fact that Naruto was with the two girls, as well as with Anko. "Who's next? Is Kurenai-sensei?" Now then, the Hokage began, catching the group's attention. "The reason I have summoned you all here is to get you genin-blooded before the Chunin exams start." Hearing this, Hinata's eyes widened as she licked her lips in anticipation. Sakura also supporting a similar expression. "What do you mean, blooded?" Kiba asked, not familiar with the term. "In short, we are taking you Gakis out to get your first kill," Anko explained bluntly with a sadistic grin on her face, prompting the feral boy to turn white. "Correct," Hiruzen stated. "It's important that this is done now, as there will be foreign teams competing that will not think twice of killing other competitors to clear out the numbers and give them an edge over the ones remaining." "So where we heading, GG?" Naruto inquired, eager to get this over and done with. He could feel the bloodlust and eagerness rising between both Sakura and Hinata. Both Anko and Yugao seemed to also sense it, as each placed a reassuring hand on their shoulders, calming them down slightly. "There are two camps just north of the village," the Hokage explained, giving the three senior kunoichi a map of where the camps were located. "Nothing big, but should be suitable for what is needed. We will leave at once then, Hokage-sama." Kurenai bowed, though there was a tone of concern in her voice. "Please be careful," the elder man expressed. While he knew it was necessary, he never liked putting his shinobi in danger, especially when they were young and inexperienced. Though he did have faith that the three Jonin-ranked kunoichis and Naruto would ensure that everyone would make it home. "Don't worry GG, I'll make sure everyone makes it home." The blonde reassured with a smile as he left the office with the rest of those who would be going out to get their first kill. A few hours later, it only took the group of Konoha shinobi a few hours to reach the 2 campsites that were indicated on the map the Hokage had given them, just as the sun began to dip below the horizon. Which was perfect for the group of genin, as the twilight hours would obscure the bandits' sight, allowing the shinobi to hide well within the sunlight itself. Pausing just above one of the camps, Naruto leaned over and whispered into Yugao's ear to watch over Hinata. Since he and Anko were going to take Sakura to the other campsite to allow her to sat her own bloodlust. Nodding, Yugao quickly informed Kurenai of the plan, whom reluctantly agreed. The Genjutsu mistress wanted to argue, but she knew Anko could easily take care of anything the bandits threw at them. Not knowing that Naruto could easily wipe out both camps without even breaking a sweat. With that in mind, Yugao and Kurenai led Team 8 towards the nearest camp. Taking their places within the trees, allowing them to map out the campsite and the various bandits' locations. Though it didn't go unnoticed that Hinata's hands were twitching as her eyes scanned the camp. Imagining where and when she would strike. Kiba had seen this and smirked before quietly moving over to her side. "Don't worry Hinata-chan, I'll protect you." He grinned, using his arrogance to hide his own fear. This of course only caused the Hyuga heiress to roll her eyes at the boy, pushing him away as she silently dropped down into the bushes below and waited her sensei's instruction to initiate the attack. Though it was taking all of her willpower not to just simply go ahead and spill blood all over the ground. Fortunately, she didn't have to wait much longer as the signal came in the form of Yugao dropping down and plunging her blade into the back of an unsuspecting bandit. Allowing a sadistic grin to spread across her face as she moved out from the bush she was in. Slowly drawing one of her kunai as she activated her Byakugan, which only made her facial features all the more frightening. Furthermore, considering some of her Hanyu features were becoming more prominent as her pupils became slitted and her canines lengthened. Moving forward towards her unfortunate target, the bandit didn't even get a chance to react as he turned around, only to have the kunai thrust into his throat, causing his blood to splatter all over the girl's face. Which had only served to increase the young Hanyu's bloodlust as she moved towards her next target. With a fluid motion, she arced her weapon upwards, cutting deep into the man's gut, causing his intestines to spill out onto the ground. The last thing he saw was the sadistic smile on the girl's face. Turning to her right, she saw her teammate Kiba standing there, frozen as he stared at the blood on his hands from the bandit he had just killed. It was clear that the feral boy was beginning to hyperventilate. Seeing another bandit moving in to attack the vulnerable Inuzuka, Hinata acted quickly and in another fluid motion, drove her kunai into the mon's throat. Much to the shock of Kiba, and Kurenai who had just witnessed how easily the Hyuga heiress had taken to killing as said girl began to cut through the onslaught of bandits that ran forward to kill her. Causing the Genjutsu mistress to feel conflicted. Should she be proud that the girl didn't hesitate, or should she be shocked at how effortlessly it came to her? On the other side of the camp, Yugao struck down the last of the bandits before she turned her attention towards her fellow Hanyu. The sword's mistress could already tell that the young girl was already experiencing a blood frenzy as the Hyuga laid waste to a fair chunk of the bandits. Quickly moving over to the young Hanyu's location, Yugao placed her hand on Hinata's shoulder. Almost immediately, the girl whirled around to stab the owner of the offending appendage before she recognized who it was, immediately dropping her kunai, dropping to her knees. "It's okay Hinata-chan," the purple-haired Anbu smiled, as she knelt down, and brought the young girl into a hug, all while whispering into her ear. "Reel it in, you control it. It doesn't control you." Nodding, Hinata closed her eyes and took a few deep breaths before she opened them again as they had reverted to their more human-like appearance. Which was a relief to both Hanyus that no one had noticed the change. Well, no one alive at least. As Kiba was too shell-shocked, while Kurenai and Shino were too busy contending with their own battles. "I'm sorry, Yugao-chan," Hinata whispered, hanging her head slightly in shame for almost attacking her future sister-wife. "It's okay, Yami Haim." The Queen of Blades smiled, using the girl's nickname. "The first time is always the hardest. Remember, you only become a monster if you take joy in killing those that are innocent. These fiends were not innocent, and now their souls have been sent to Jashin-sama for punishment." Nodding, the young Hyuga proceeded to attempt to clean the blood off her face, though only served to smear it around further, causing Yugao to chuckle as Hinata pouted. "With Sakura, Naruto, and Anko. Are you ready, Sakura-chan?" Naruto asked, looking at his pink-haired mate, whom, like Hinata earlier, was fidgeting in anticipation. Though unlike the Hyuga heiress, the Pinkett was given permission to let loose with her Hanyu abilities, as the only witnesses would be Anko and himself. "Let's do this," she replied as she summoned forth one of her dark blades in a reverse grip position. Nodding, both Anko and Naruto moved out from the hiding places, while the latter created a half-dozen shadow clones to ensure his mate would be safe. Though they had explicit instructions to only intervene if she truly needed the help. Just like Team 8, the three Hanyus quietly moved into the camp and began to silently cut down the bandits. Much like Hinata, Sakura had taken to it like a fish to water as her Hanyu blood screamed out for more blood to be spilled onto the earth. Using her dark blade to stab into a bandit's heart before bring the blade up, causing the poor bandit's top half to split open like a flower. At the Pinkett's sides, both Naruto and Anko cut down their own bandits with ease and effective brutality. Though had taken care to allow the Pinkett to set the pace. Both knew she needed to get this out of her system, or else she would run the risk of losing control in the future, possibly at the worst time. During the Chunin exams, for example, the last thing both Naruto and Anko wanted to deal with was a blood-crazed Hanyu in the midst of a crowded village filled with foreign visitors. For her part, Sakura was unaware of what her two fellow Hanyus were thinking. All she knew was how good it felt to have the warm blood of her foes splatter across her skin, causing her Hanyu features to fully come out, which only served to incite further panic and fear among the bandits as they began to scream hysterically about demons coming to kill them. Which they were right, as all three effortlessly cut down each and every one of them, leaving no survivors. Once it was over, both Naruto and Anko quickly worked to calm their fellow Hanyu, reassuring her that the worst of the blood frenzy was behind her now, and that she would have an easier time dealing with it in the future. After a few minutes, Sakura had managed to rein in her emotions, before pouncing on top of the blonde Hanyu and assault his mouth with her own. Much to the amusement of the snake mistress, as the Pinkett had discovered that seeing her mate killing the bandits in such a manner had made her incredibly horny. "I want it," she rasped between kisses. "Right now." "I know, Sakura-chan." The blonde managed to answer, as the Pinkett attempted to strip him of his clothing. Her hands desperately clawing at his pants before he had managed to gently restrain her. "But wait until we get home, and I will sat your desires. I promise. Besides, my little cherry blossom, I don't think you want Team 8 to see you getting pounded," Anko added with a grin, earning an embarrassed blush from the Pinkett. Not to mention, Hinata would no doubt be feeling the same way, and the snake mistress was fairly certain Kurenai would not want to witness her prized student in such a state. Naruto seemed to have the same line of thought as he looked over at his first mate. "I'm not getting any sleep tonight, am I?" he asked. "Nope," both Sakura and Anko replied with a grin. Hokage's office, 2 hours later. Hiruzen looked over the group that had just returned. Noting that both Sakura and Hinata were still covered in blood, no doubt from the bandits, though he did note an aura of relief coming from the two. As if the two of them had just vented a large amount of pent-up frustration all at once. While Ashino and Naruto seemed relatively calm and collected, despite what they had just done. Though the elder man knew that Naruto had killed a few times before, so he was desensitized to it, while Ashino was too logical in mind to allow it to fully affect him. Kiba on the other hand looked pale and sweaty, clearly shell-shocked from the experience. The old man could only hope that the boy would move past it and be able to perform when the time was needed. Though he was sure the feral boy's mother would help in that department. The Inuzukas were always a hardy clan. "I am pleased to see you all have returned safely, if not a bit messy." Hiruzen smiled, earning a few embarrassed chuckles, namely from the two girls covered in blood. "This is not an easy life, and far too often are we forced to take a life." He continued, "While we have always strived to simply subdue our enemies, there will always be some that cannot be subdued and must be removed permanently to prevent them from becoming a future threat to not only yourselves, but the village as well." "We understand, GG," Naruto spoke up. "Some will force our hands, but so long as we take no joy in killing those that are innocent, we keep our humanity." Hiruzen nodded sagely at the blonde's words, not knowing their double meaning that his mates had picked up on. It was the same thing he had repeated before to both of them. "Very good, Naruto-kun," he smiled. "Once again, good job. All of you are dismissed." "Thank you, Hokage-sama." Kurenai bowed before she turned to her team. "I'm going to take Kiba home, Hinata, would you?" "I'm going to Naruto-kun's." The heiress interrupted her sensei as she latched on to the blonde's arm, as Sakura claimed his other arm. Meanwhile, Anko had wrapped her arms around his neck from behind. Residing to his immediate fate, he understood what his three mates wanted and brought them all with him into the shadows as he sunk into the floor. Without a doubt, neither one of them wanted to wait, so walking home was out of the question. Meanwhile, all Kurenai could do was stand there and stare at the spot that the four of them had been standing, a strong blush adorning her cheeks at the implications her surrogate daughter had left open. Hiruzen on the other hand had passed out from the fountain of blood that came from his nose. While Kiba was still shell-shocked from his first kill. Seeing all this, Yugao couldn't help but shake her head and chuckle at the reactions of everyone. Day of the Chunin exams. With a tired yawn, Naruto leaned back against one of the training posts of his team's designated training grounds as he waited for the rest of his team to arrive. The only reason Sakura had not accompanied him to the training ground was because she had reluctantly stayed at her mother's house. Naruto had ventured to ask why she just didn't tell her mother the truth, but the Pinkett had countered that it would only cause more headaches for them. Naruto had accepted his mate's reasoning, knowing full well with her mother on the civilian council, and one of the few still firmly rooted in the Uchiha camp, she could no doubt make their daily lives within the village far more annoying than it needed to be. His thoughts then turned to the other member that made up Team 7. The brooding Uchiha, whom was no doubt still in the shower trying to wash out the stench of the canines he had been forced to clean during his and Sakura's absence. Hana had regaled the two Hanyus with tales of the multiple times her mother had planted the arrogant Uchiha face first into a pile of dog shit. Much to the amusement of both Sakura and Naruto. Releasing another bored yawn, Naruto thought back over the events of the past few weeks, which for lack of a better word, had been extremely eventful, constantly keeping the blonde Hanyu busy. Ever since he had returned to the village from his mission in Yuki no Kuni, now named Haru no Kuni, Naruto had been busy non-stop. Balancing his time between training for the upcoming exams, and spending time with his girls. With the help of Yugao, he had also even managed to sneak away with Sakura and Hinata a few more times for wipe out more bandit camps. Allowing them to fully get control over their Hanyu tendencies. It also helped to allow the girls to fully go all out with their Hanyu abilities. Which was a sight truly to behold, as both Sakura and Hinata had torn through the bandits, slavers, and such with brutal glee. Aside from that, he had also taken both Yakumo and Izumi out on their respective dates as he had promised. However, both dates had encountered their own hiccups due to some unwanted visitors. Though despite that, both dates had gone well and each girl enjoyed their time with the blonde Hanyu. The memories still brought a smile to Naruto's face. Flashback no Jutsu, Yakumo's date. Naruto couldn't help but to chuckle silently to himself as he observed how nervous the budding genjutsu mistress was acting as they left the Uzumaki compound. Though he could understand the reason why she felt so anxious. Not only was she going out on her first date, but it was also the first time she had left the compound since Naruto had brought her into his home after the root incident, so it would only be natural for her to feel a bit nervous. Smiling, he grasped her hand and gave it a firm squeeze, catching her attention. "Are you ready, Yakumo-chan?" he inquired with a smile, earning one in return from the budding genjutsu mistress. "Where are we going, Naruto-kun?" she asked, as the blonde had yet to reveal what he had planned for their date. "That is a secret," he grinned, "but I promise you will like it." Casually, the two strolled through the village hand in hand, earning a few curious looks at the Kurama heiress being out and about alongside Naruto. Fortunately for the blonde Hanyu and his date, many of the village's populace had changed their view of the blonde, much thanks to his accomplishments within the village as well as he feats outside of Konoha as well. Though there were a few quiet whispers among the onlookers, mostly pertaining to the young genjutsu mistress, as rumors had spread that she was dead. "They're staring at us, Naruto-kun," Yakumo whispered, a little embarrassed by the attention they had attracted. "Let them." The blonde smiled, giving her hand a reassuring squeeze. "You're beautiful after all." Blushing, the brunette proceeded to rest her head on her date's shoulder. A few more minutes found the duo in the middle of a festive-looking market filled with various art supplies, portraits, and other miscellaneous items for aspiring artists. Seeing this, Yakumo's eyes widen in shock as Naruto lead her through the marketplace, allowing her to look over various paintings and other art pieces that were on display. She struggled to find the words to describe her joy. "I told you that you would enjoy where I was going to take you." The blonde smiled as Yakumo began to drag him to the various stalls and vendors in excitement. As the hours ticked by, The young couple had decided to sit side by side for an evening meal at one of the various food vendors that littered the marketplace that offered a wide assortment of food and refreshments. This had also given Naruto the chance to safely seal all of the gifts he had bought, his Daitanto storage scrolls that he had brought along, as he had fully intended to spoil the young genjutsu mistress. Which he did, having bought her a brand new easel, along with buying out one vendor's entire stock of canvas. Not to mention an entire collection of new brushes of various sizes, as well as paint of various colors. But the item she cherished most was a portrait that had done with just the two of them as they embraced one another in loving comfort. Even if it was a little embarrassing as to how the artist had captured the moment. While the two were having an intimate moment together, sharing a kiss, the artist had snapped their picture and had all but begged to do the portrait. While Yakumo blushed in embarrassment of the situation, Naruto had agreed and the artist had set to work immediately on the portrait, using the photo as reference. Once it was finished, Yakumo was breathless due to how beautiful it was. Naruto-kun, you really didn't have to do all of this for me. Yakumo stated with a slight blush as she gestured to the small pile of sealing scrolls that contained everything the blonde had bought her. Yakumo-chan, you are a very special woman. Naruto smiled at her. You deserve all of this. Thank you, Naruto-kun. She replied, taking a bite of the dango she had ordered. A slight blush on her cheeks from the compliment she had just received. You're very welcome. The blonde smiled back, before digging into the curry before him. Having opted to have something other than ramen during their date, as the two ate in comfortable silence, a shadow grew before them. Looking up, Yakumo's eyes widened in fear at the man that now stood before them. A deep scowl etched across his aging face as he glared at the young genjutsu mistress, causing her to shrink back slightly until she felt a comforting squeeze from the blonde next to her. Something I can help you with, Unkai-san? Naruto inquired in an even tone, catching the aging mont's attention. Yes, Unkai stated, as acting head of the Kurama clan, I demand that you surrender Yakumo Kurama to be executed immediately for the murder of my brother and his wife. Slowly, Naruto stood up from his seat and leveled his own glare towards the acting head of the Kurama clan, causing the elder man to flinch under the blonde Hanyu's cold gaze. All the while, guiding Yakumo up from her seat and behind him. Well, acting clan head. Naruto smirked. As the official clan head of the Uzumaki clan, I am going to have to not so politely tell you to fuck off with your demands, as Yakumo-chan is under the Uzumaki clan protection. Do you have any? Furthermore, I am well aware of your numerous requests for Yakumo-chan's execution. I am also well aware that each request was denied by the Hokage. So no, I will not be handing over Yakumo-chan just so you can murder her. Also you can be filled with a false sense of justice to inflate your fragile ego. At this, Unkai felt enraged that the young blonde would embarrass him so, and make such accusations that all he wanted to do was murder his niece in cold blood. Boy, you have no idea, the elder man began. Yes I do, Naruto interrupted. Now, this will be your only warning. Walk away. A moment of tense silence passed between the two clan heads. This isn't over. Unkai was unable to finish as he suddenly felt three sharp edges lightly pressed against various parts of his body. Turning his head slightly, he could make out three clones of the boy in front of him, all holding a black blade ready to impale him at the slightest movement against the two lovers. Know this Unkai Kurama, Naruto stated coldly. You make any move against Yakumo-chan, any move at all, I will see it as an act of war against the Uzumaki clan and I will single-handedly wipe out your entire clan. Are you threatening me, boy? Unkai asked defiantly, though fear was evident in his voice. No, I'm making a promise. The blonde Hanyu stated, leaking a small amount of killer intent directed solely at the man before him. Now leave. A heavy silence hung between the two clan heads as Naruto's promise hung in the air between them. Despite himself, Unkai couldn't help but to slightly shudder in fear before the blonde's eyes. Every instinct screamed at the elder Kurama that this was not an idle promise, that the blonde would massacre his entire clan. This was further reinforced by small flashes of visions of his various clan members' massacred bodies, causing the elder man to break out in a cold sweat. Wisely, Unkai opted to retreat, leaving the two lovers alone. Once he was out of sight, Naruto turned to comfort Yakumo, only to be engulfed in a firm hug from the brunette young woman, whom was now crying into his chest. Smiling, he wrapped his arms around her, allowing his hands to run up and down her back in a comforting manner. Thank you, Naruto-kun. She spoke softly, her face still buried into his chest. For defending me. Yakumo-chan. Naruto smiled. You are one of my Heims. I will always defend you. Smiling, she looked up and leaned in, giving him a soft kiss before resting her head on his shoulder, allowing her face to snuggle into his neck as she held him. So, is this the part where you tell me about you being a Hanyu and Jashin's champion? She asked softly so that only he can hear her, earning a chuckle from the blonde. You knew about that, huh? He asked playfully. Kind of hard not to when we live under the same roof. She playfully retorted. Also, Anko-chan is very excitable. That she is. The blonde chuckled. So, how do you feel about it? Naruto-kun, you helped me and brought me into your home, and you asked nothing in return. She began, looking up at him. Not to mention, you and the rest of the girls have given the love I have missed since my parents died. So if you would allow it, I would love to be one of your mates. Both Izumi-chan and I have both been speaking to Yugao-chan about becoming true Jashinist. She continued with a slight blush, reinforcing her former statement by exposing the base of her neck as an offer to be marked. However, Naruto merely covered her neck and gave her a caring smile, earning a look of confusion from the budding genjutsu mistress. Not here, Yakumo-chan, he told her. Once we get home. Okay, Naruto-kun. She nodded, resting her head once more on his shoulder, letting out a sigh of contentment. Flashback no jutsu dispel. True to his word, once they had returned to the compound that evening, he took the young genjutsu mistress into her room for some privacy and marked her. After giving her his typical lecture about the intimacy behind the mark and so forth. Hilariously, Yakumo had told him to shut up and mark her already before pulling him into a fierce kiss. Something both Anko and Sakura had gotten a kick out of when they had learned of what had transpired between himself and the newly fledged Hanyu, much to the blonde's embarrassment. Regardless, the rest of his mates had warmly welcomed Yakumo into the family. Of course, while reminiscing about his date with the young genjutsu mistress, Naruto couldn't forget about his date with Izumi that had happened the following night after his date with Yakumo. Flashback no jutsu, Izumi's date. Relaxing back into the blonde's embrace as the two of them looked over the village from their vantage point atop the Hokage monument as the sun began to set over the horizon, the young Uchiha woman couldn't even begin to fathom how she got here. Originally, she had been assigned to follow, gain information, and capture or eliminate her target. Instead, during her mission, she had ended up falling for her target. Even before he had welcomed her into his home, she had begun to develop feelings for the blonde Hanyu. Seeing the way he treated his girls and those close to him, not to mention watching how his girls interacted with one another, had filled her with a sense of longing. As if it was a scene that had come to life from one of those romance novels that she had loved reading before her time en route. However, as it normally does, whenever the young Uchiha woman would reminisce about her current romantic life, ghosts from her past would begin to sneak up on her, forcing her to recall her short one-sided romance with one Itachi Uchiha. The mere thought of the kin slayer would cause her blood to boil, infuriated that she had bared her heart to him, and he had figuratively ripped it out when he had attempted to kill her the night he had slain the majority of the Uchiha clan. You're thinking too loud, Izumi-chan. Naruto's soothing voice broke the Uchiha woman out of her thoughts as he embraced her lithe frame, giving her a sense of comfort and safety. Something on your mind? Just thinking about the past is all. She frowned, snuggling into his hold. If you wish to talk about it, I am willing to listen. Naruto stated after a few seconds of silence had passed between them. However, I will not pry if you are not ready. Silence hung between the two for a handful of seconds before Izumi sighed and leaned forward, out of the blonde's hold. Like I said, if you don't want to talk about it. No, it would probably be best if I get this off my chest. The Uchiha woman stated, interrupting Naruto. Seeing as the last person she had talked to about it had only used her as a disposable tool. Perhaps it would be best to share her pain with someone who was genuinely concerned for her. Turning so that she was face to face with the blonde Hanyu. As you know, I am one of the survivors of the Uchiha massacre. She began, playing with the grass in front of her. What most don't know is that the night that it had happened, Itachi had asked me out on a date. At the time, I had a crush on him. Mainly because he was the only one who treated me well and didn't care about who my parents were. He helped me grow as a kunoichi. He was even there for me when both of my parents died. I thought he loved me. Izumi explained with a slight blush, a little embarrassed that she was telling her current love interest about a past love interest. However, Naruto said nothing, allowing her to continue. I should have known something was wrong. He was the son of the clan head, and I was just a half-breed. She growled at the term that the entire Uchiha clan had labeled her with, since she was only half Uchiha on her mother's side. Still, I foolishly gave him all my trust. Maybe because I was desperate to actually have another member of the clan acknowledge me. It wasn't until I was bleeding out on my apartment floor did I realize the truth. I was just a means to an end for him to gain more power. Tears leaked out of Izumi's eyes as she choked back the quiet sobs, prompting the blonde Hanyu to reach over and pull her into his warm embrace and allow her to cry into his chest, leaning back as he did so that he was laying down on the grass, pulling the crying Uchiha girl on top of him. Rubbing her back and combing his fingers through her hair. I later came to in an underground medical facility. She continued, once she had calmed down. I only survived because I have a rare medical condition in which my heart is located on the right side of my chest, instead of the left side. Well, I for one am glad you survived. Naruto spoke softly. You're a very special woman, Izumi-chan. Izumi couldn't help but smile as she nuzzled into his neck from her position. Thankful for the compliment. It was then that Danzo came to me. He asked me what happened. She continued her tale. After I told him, he then offered me a chance to get my revenge on the man that betrayed me and to give me a purpose to protect Konoha from the shadows. I immediately agreed. You didn't even think it over? The blonde inquired in a gentle tone. No, the Uchiha girl sighed. Then I am willing to bet that he had the seals placed on you just before you woke up. Naruto speculated, and only gave you the illusion of having a choice. She began before stopping. No, that makes sense. He would. Did do something like that, with Yakumo-chan. So what do you want to do now? He asked. I don't know. Izumi sighed. Part of me still wants to get revenge on Itachi, but the other part of me wants to just move on with my life. May I offer some advice? The blonde inquired, earning a nod from the Uchiha girl. Forget about revenge. Revenge is an ugly road that will only lead you to more pain and ruin. To yourself and those around you. Don't get me wrong, he continued before she could say anything. I am not saying you should forgive him for what he did. Just don't let him dictate your life. Live for yourself. From her position on top of him, Izumi leaned up so that she could look him in the eyes. A smile evident upon her face accompanied with a healthy blush as she slowly lowered her lips to meet his, allowing them to clash with each other in an intimate kiss as the blonde beneath her wrapped his arms around her frame, holding her close. Thank you, Naruto-kun. She stated once the two had separated, laying her head down on his chest one more. For what? For everything. The Uchiha girl smiled. Despite the circumstances of our meeting, you and your girls still brought me into your home, protected me, and gave me a sense of family I never had. You're very welcome, Izumi-chan. He smiled, looking down at the raven-haired girl on top of him as he allowed his fingers to comb through her hair once more. So, is this where you mark me as one of your mates? She asked after a few moments of comfortable silence, prompting the blonde Hanyu to chuckle. You know all of what it entails, correct? He inquired, still combing his fingers through her hair. I do, she replied, leaning up so she could look him in the eyes once again. Bearing the mark will turn me into a Hanyu like yourself and the others that also bear your mark. I am also well aware of the fact that this isn't a light commitment, and that it will span hundreds of years or more. And the fact that I am Jashin-chan's champion doesn't bother me at all, Izumi stated, and as you know, Yakumo-chan and I have both been talking with Yugao-chan about following Jashin-sama. I see, the blonde mused, so your mind is made up then. He got his answer in the form of her smashing her lips against his own in a fierce passionate kiss. Receiving his answer, Naruto broke the kiss and began to trail light kiss down the right side of her neck before stopping at the base of her neck. Giving the area one last gentle kiss before he bit down on her neck, channeling his demonic chakra into her, prompting the Uchiha woman to do the same to him, thus accepting his mark. A few seconds later, he released his mouth from her neck and held her close as her body began to go through the changes of becoming a half-demon, causing her to mildly spasm and shake for a few minutes before her body became relaxed once more. Welcome to the family, Izumi-chan. He smiled as he looked down at her. Thank you, Naruto-kun. Izumi smiled as she leaned up and kissed him once more. This time more tenderly and lovingly, before breaking the kiss and snuggling into him. Feel a sense of contentment wash over her as she felt his arms embrace her once more. An hour later, their date over, The two newly mated Hanyus casually strolled through the village with Izumi resting her head on her blonde mate's shoulder as they made their way to the Uzumaki compound, his long coat draped over her shoulders, enjoying each other's company. Where the other girls were no doubt waiting to hear all the juicy details, which partially made the young Uchiha woman a bit nervous as Anko could be rather forceful when she wanted to hear all the details, especially if anything intimate were to have happened between the two of them. However, their evening was interrupted when a raven-haired figure stood in front of them. A deep scowl etched across his face as he narrowed his eyes at the Uchiha woman. "So, the half-breed survived as well," Sasuke commented, his voice full of venom as he glared at Izumi. "You could have redeemed yourself for your filthy blood and submitted yourself to be bred by the elite to restore the clan. Instead, you whored yourself out to this filth." At this, Izumi's Sharingan eyes flared to life as she glared at the arrogant last Uchiha. Unknown to her though, they had evolved to the next stage, Mangekyo Sharingan 1. This of course caused Sasuke to flinch under the woman's glare. Naruto had moved to defend his mate's honor, only to be stopped by a subtle gesture from the raven-haired woman. "If redeeming myself means I would have to submit myself to such an arrogant, short-sighted child," she growled as her Mangekyo Sharingan burned brightly, her Hanyu features slightly showing, making her look all the more intimidating to the last Uchiha. "Then I renounce my Uchiha blood and proudly take up the Uzumaki name." Naruto could only smirk as he saw the color drain from Sasuke's face as Izumi defiantly denounced her Uchiha heritage in front of the vaunted last Uchiha and even claimed his as her own. Deciding to avoid the confrontation escalating further, the blonde gently took Izumi's hand and brought her into his embrace. "Let us go, Izumi-chan." He smiled. "Everyone is waiting for us back home." Releasing a soft giggle, the now former Uchiha fell in step with her mate, leaving behind a stunned Sasuke, whom was still processing what had happened. Flashback no jutsu dispel. Of course that had lead to more tension between Sasuke and himself when the team would attend meetings and perform more D-rank missions within the village walls, but the blonde didn't care. There was very little Sasuke could do in regards to Izumi. Officially, she was declared dead, a victim of the Uchiha massacre, and Danzo would not admit to having her secretly working for him. "Morning, Naruto-kun," Sakura greeted as she entered the training ground, snapping the blonde out of his musings. "Morning, Sakura-chan." He smiled as he stood up to officially greet his pink-haired mate, giving her a soft kiss on the lips. "Sorry to keep you waiting." The pink-haired Hanyu apologized, a look of annoyance washing over her face. "My mother had insisted on some girl talk, which more or less equated to her pressuring me to pursue Sasuke-tem again." Naruto could only growl in response, not liking the thought of Sakura's mother pushing his mates towards another male, let alone one that had nearly gotten her killed on their first mission outside of the village. After the Chunin exams, Sakura spoke, burying her face into his chest, prompting the blonde to embrace her. "I want to tell her about us. Would you like me to be there when you talk to her?" "I would love that," she replied with a smile. Smiling, the two sat down and rested against the training pole next to each other. No talking, just enjoying each other's company. A few more minutes ticked by before they were graced with the presence of the brooding Uchiha, whom shot Naruto a dirty look upon entering the training ground, prompting the two Hanyus to chuckle, knowing full well what it was about. "Yo," Kakashi stated as he appeared in a poof of smoke on top of the training post that Sakura and Naruto were leaning against. "Let me guess, you're late because you were being chased by a oiled-up guy sensei." Naruto ventured, causing the masked Jonin to dry heave at the thought of the green beast of Konoha chasing after him, wearing nothing but a radiant smile and covered in body oil. That was not a pleasant image, Naruto," Kakashi gasped, earning a chuckle from the blonde. All in all, the masked Jonin was pleased that he was able to repair his fractured relationship with the other two members of his genin team. Through their reintroductions the weekend the two returned from their last mission, he was able to learn more about them. Sakura's elemental affinities, which he was surprised that even that early on, Naruto had been helping in her training. Feeling a bit ashamed when the two admitted that since they already knew the tree-walking exercise, they had left shadow clones to do it for them, while they trained with their elements down on the beach. He was also able to get a more accurate reading on just how skilled Naruto truly was. While not completely accurate, from what Kakashi had learned from the blonde would put him roughly at high Chunin to mid-Jonin level. Sakura, he had placed at low to mid-Chunin, making both of his estranged students more than ready for the exams. Regrettably, He had to admit that on their own, they had progressed further than even Sasuke had so far. Anyways, Kakashi coughed, getting his team's attention, pulling out 3 slips of paper. As you know, the Chunin exams are starting today, and I took the liberty of signing you 3 up. All 3 of the genin could only grin in response as they took their slips of paper, which would give them entry into the exams. You two better not get in my way, Sasuke stated with an arrogant smirk as he departed the training ground, causing both Hanyus to merely shake their head in response. Come on Sakura-chan, let's do this, Naruto exclaimed. Hokage's office. Each team has been submitted their permission slips, Hokage-sama. Iruka informed the Hokage with a slight frown. The scarred Chunin wasn't exactly pleased to hear that all of the Junin senseis had endorsed their teams for the exams. Honestly, he felt that only Guy's team was ready for the test, the others were still too green. Having only been genin for less than a year, you don't approve that each of the teams have been endorsed, do you Iruka? Hiruzen inquired with a knowing look. The elder village leader knew all too well how the academy instructor felt about his former students, namely Naruto. It was clear the scarred man viewed the young blonde as a little brother figure. To be honest sir, I just don't think most of the teams are ready for the exams. Iruka openly stated, with the exception of Team 9, everyone hasn't even been genin for a full year. Be that as it may, the Hokage began with a slight grin. But, as you may recall, Team 7 themselves have had quite the start for their shinobi careers. Their first C-rank mission turned into an A- rank, yet they were still able to complete it with no fatalities or lasting injuries. But, then there was their most recent mission in Haru no Kuni. Hiruzen interrupted the instructor, which, according to Princess Koyuki herself, both Naruto-kun and Sakura-chan were key figures for not only the mission's success, but also keeping the rebels alive. But Naruto is quite capable. The elder man interrupted once more. Most, if not all of Team 7's success, has been due to Naruto-kun. He has proven to have a sharp intellect, enough to rival, if not surpass, any Nara clan member. He also has a drive in him to protect those who cannot protect themselves, regardless of the consequences to himself. In Nami no Kuni, at the risk of being charged with insubordination, he ignored Kakashi's orders and remained with the family on a hunch that the family would be targeted. A hunch that proved to be correct. In Haru no Kuni, Naruto-kun had warned Kakashi countless times of an impeding ambush. The elder man continued, when Hatake ignored his warnings, Naruto-kun had taken it upon himself to plan out every detail to protect not only the client, but everyone else. Which was complicated even further when he learned of the rebels attempting a counter-ambush. In the end, Naruto saved everyone, even taking 4 kunai in the back to protect Koyuki Heim from harm. Iruka could only gawk at the aged village leader. While he had known of the team's numerous successes, he had never read the actual reports as they were generally reserved for the Hokage's eyes only, and thus, he had given credit to Kakashi for the team's success. But to learn that from the team's inception, Naruto was the one responsible for each victory. Still, if you are unconvinced, Hiruzen spoke once more, feel free to test them yourself. With a silent nod, the scarred Chunin left the office, pondering what course of action he should take. Konoha streets. Both Sakura and Naruto were casually making their way through the village towards the academy, having just dropped off their entry papers to a receptionist in a makeshift office at the edge of the village, instead of the usual records building located next to the Hokage's tower. Making the Pinkett groan in slight irritation. To make matters worse, Kakashi had conveniently failed to mention where they had to turn the papers in at. Seriously, they could have just had everyone turn in their papers at the academy. Sakura grumbled, earning a chuckle from her blonde mate. I am sure they did it this way on purpose. Naruto commented with a thoughtful expression. Probably to throw the participants off their game. Remember what Kakashi did during our genin test? Ugh, don't remind me. The Pinkett groaned. Her days fresh out of the academy were not her proudest of moments. What I meant was when Kakashi-sensei initially made his work against each other using hunger, tiredness, and irritation. The blonde pointed out, it stands to reason that Konoha is doing the same thing, to further weed out any genins who are not ready for the exams. Makes sense, Sakura conceded, though still grumbled about having to walk all the way across the village. So, did Anko-chan or Yugao-chan give you any hints on what to expect? Nope, he replied, earning a defeated sigh from the pink-haired Kunoichi. All Anko-chan said was that there would be a surprise, though still refused to give any hints as to what it is. Even after I bribed her with a case of dango. Wow, must be a hell of a surprise if she wouldn't even budge after that. Sakura commented, clearly shocked that her future sister-wife had refused her favorite treat. Ouch, a voice exclaimed from just around the corner ahead of the two Hanyus. That hurt you little jerk. Rounding the corner, the pair were greeted by the sight of a bulky-looking guy, wearing a Bunraku-style puppeteer's costume, with a black hood with what appeared to be cat-like ears on the top. A Suna symbol etched into the boy's Hittite that seemed to be stitched onto the cat-eared hood. Makeup covered the large boy's face in some sort of intricate design that appeared to have been drawn on using his sister's lipstick, if the color that adorned the girl's lips next to him was any indication. In the makeup-wearing boy's hand was none other than Konohamaru, the grandson of the old man, his other hand drawn back in a threatening gesture against the kid. Next to the boy in cat pajamas was sandy blonde-haired girl with an annoyed look on her face. She had teal-colored eyes and her hair tied into 4 different pigtails tails. 2 on the top, and 2 on the bottom. Her outfit consisting of a single light purple, off-the-shoulders garment that extended halfway down her thighs. A scarlet sash wrapped firmly around her waist. Underneath the light purple garment, the girl wore a full-body fishnet armor that covered her shoulders and her left thigh, while a separate piece of fishnet covered her right calf. Her Hittite hanging loosely around her neck, as what appeared to be a massive fan was slung over her back. Put him down, you big cross-dressing bully. A girl around the same age as both Naruto and Sakura shouted. Taking in her appearance, the two noted that she wore her dark brown hair up into a pair of buns at the top of her head, giving off the appearance of panda ears. This was especially highlighted by her choice of clothing. A pink sleeveless kipao-style blouse with red trimmings and yellow fastening buttons, accompanied with dark green pants. With a kunai holster secured firmly to her outer right thigh and a pair of blue, ankle-high kunoichi sandals, with her Hittite proudly displaying the leaf symbol on her forehead. Kankuro, just put him down. The blonde-haired girl sighed in frustration. You don't want to piss him off, do you? No, this little jerk needs to pay for running into me. The bulky boy stated, bringing his fist back to punch the young boy. Besides, he isn't here, and what he doesn't know won't hurt him. You know. A low voice spoke from directly behind Kankuro made itself known, causing the poor Suna team to jump. Drag night is on Tuesday evenings at the Rusty Kunai bar, but for crying out loud man, not in front of the children. Face burning red with embarrassment, the Suna teen dropped the young boy, earning a slight eep from him as he landed on his rump, and turned to face the blonde-haired teen. It didn't help matters that 2 of the 3 girls were currently laughing at his expense, while the bun-haired girl had stars in her eyes as she gazed upon the blonde behind him, or rather, what the blonde held. Turning to meet the upstart, he was swiftly met with a slight pressure to his throat. Casting his eyes down, Kankuro could make out what appeared to be a black, blade-like weapon behind held in a reverse grip position in the blonde's hand, aimed directly at his jugular. Now, normally I would ask why Suna Shinobi are in Konoha, but I am going to guess you are here to partake in the Chunin exams. Naruto commented as he withdrew his blade, now that Konohamaru was out of danger. Taking a step back away from the black-clad teen. That is correct, the blonde girl answered, once she had reined in her laughter at her brother's expense. Naruto. The blonde Hanyu replied. Naruto Uzumaki, and may I have the name of such a beautiful desert flower. Te Tamari. The blonde girl blushed at the teen's compliment, while Kankuro fumed at the blonde that was flirting with his sister. Tamari of the wind, and this idiot that steals my makeup is my brother, Kankuro. A pleasure to meet you, Tamari-chan. The blonde stated as he gently took hold of the Suna girl's hand and gave a light kiss on her knuckles, causing her to blush even more at the gesture. It's not makeup, Kankuro exclaimed, interrupting the moment between the 2 blondes. It's war paint, if you say so, Naruto shrugged, turning his attention back to the Suna boy. As I said, drag night is on Tuesdays at the Rusty Kunai, enjoy yourself. This earned another round of laughter from Sakura, Tamari, and Konohamaru, causing the black-clad Suna teen to fume further as his hands itched to pull the massive bundle that was secured to his back out, and put the blonde upstart in his place. Meanwhile, the bun-haired girl still seemed to be in a trance as she stared blankly at the blonde Hanyu. Noticing this, Naruto moved over to her and snapped his fingers in front of her face a few times before she snapped out of her daze. Hey, welcome back, have a nice trip. Naruto smirked, causing the poor girl to blush in embarrassment. Sorry, I just kind of zone out when I see a new unique weapon, being Konoha's weapons mistress and all. The dark brown-haired girl replied. Name's Tenten Higurashi. Pleasure to meet you. Since you were spacing out, I guess I should reintroduce myself. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. He introduced himself for a second time, much to Tenten's embarrassment for being reminded that she had been daydreaming about the blonde's weapon, which prompted her to perk up and look at the blonde questionably. What exactly was that kind of weapon? She asked. This, Naruto asked as he summoned for the black Tonto once more, still holding it in a reverse grip position, earning a nod from the bun-haired girl as her eyes start to glaze over upon seeing the weapon once more. This is my dark blade technique from my bloodline. Essentially, it's a form of yin release, allowing me to manipulate the darkness element into physical form. That is so cool. Tenten gushed as her eyes developed a star-struck look as she imagined all sorts of possibilities such a technique could produce. It gets even better, Sakura commented as she approached the group, catching the bun-haired girl's attention. Any weapon formed from his dark blade technique will not dull, lose its edge, and is pretty much indestructible. Wait, I know you. Tenten commented as she pointed towards Sakura. Aren't you one of those fangirls for that brooding emo Uchiha? At this, Sakura couldn't help but allow her head to drop in shame at being reminded of possibly the worst mistake she had ever made in her short life so far. Please don't remind me of that. The Pinkett sighed. Those really were not my proudest of days. That's in the past now. Sakura-chan here has improved by leaps and bounds since her academy days. Naruto stated matter-of-factually, defending his mate. Yeah, all it took was the bastard to nearly kill me to open my eyes. Sakura half grumbled, recounting the events that occurred during her first mission outside of the village. Hearing this, Tenten, Temari, Kankuro, and even Konohamaru's eyes widened in disbelief at the implication. You don't mean that he... Tenten couldn't even finish the question, clearly disgusted by the Uchiha's actions. Yeah, bastard switched places with me so I could take the blows meant for him. The Pinkett growled. Thankfully Haku-chan wasn't aiming to kill, only to incapacitate. Wait, you mean Haku that is currently working in the hospital? The bun-haired girl inquired, having recalled seeing someone by that name tending to her teammates' injuries on occasion when they would go overboard on their training. Yup, Naruto chuckled. She's one of my girlfriends. Her dream is to be the #1 Iryo nin in all of the elemental nations. Wait, what do you mean one of your girlfriends? Kankuro inquired, though both girls had the same question running through their mind as well. The short version is that Naruto-kun is the last of 2 clans. Sakura explained, catching the group's attention. So lucky bastard is in the CRA then. The black-clad Tsunaboy commented, knowing full well the benefits of being in the program. A hint of jealousy in his tone, though his lecherous thoughts had only earned him a bop on the head by an irate sister. Yes, I submitted myself into the CRA, but not for the reasons you girls think. Naruto stated, seeing the angered looks from both Temari and Tenten. I took the initiative because I knew once my heritage got out, the council would force their daughters and others on me, and I refuse to be in any relationship that has no love in it. So by making the first move, I got to dictate my terms, and my terms are simple. Free choice. Hearing this, both Temari and Tenten calmed down slightly, a bit surprised that the blonde in front of them had such forethought to avoid having other women being put in such a predicament with no choice. Turning towards the pink-haired girl, the bun-haired girl spoke. You're one of his girlfriends too, aren't you? It was more of a statement than a question. Yeah, Sakura blushed slightly. I was already slowly gaining a crush for him during our mission to Nami no Kuni, but I fully fell for him when he took care of me after the incident. Since then, well, it's only been better. Wait, that Uchiha prick is the last of his clan too, does that mean he can be in the CRA as well? Tenten asked, a little worried, since after hearing what the raven-haired boy did to his own teammate, she knew there was very little chance he would be as kind as Naruto was with such a program. He was. Naruto sighed, tried to use the act to force Haku-chan and a few others to be with him. Fortunately, they were already involved with me, so they were spared from that fate. After that, Sasuke Tem threw a massive fit and pulled himself from the program. Shortly after, the old man banned him entirely from entering it in the future. Ain't that right, Uke-chan? Naruto commented, looking towards a tree branch just above the group, prompting the others to look up and see the lone Uchiha standing above them. A scowl on his face due to the blonde's new nickname for him as he jumped down, just outside of the group of people. The raccoon can come out to play as well. At this, a swirl of sand appeared in the center of the group, revealing a fair-skinned boy with short and spiky auburn hair. His green eyes lacking any pupils or eyebrows, with tanuki-like black rings around his eyes, as well as the kanji for love above his left eye. His attire consisted of a short-sleeved black bodysuit with an open neck and almost full-length leggings. A white cloth wraps around his right shoulder and the left side of his hip, with a wide brown leather strap that supports the massive gourd on his back. His Suna Hitai wrapped around the aforementioned leather strap. Hey Gaara, Kankuro stammered in fear at the appearance of his younger brother, knowing full well the youngest of the three had observed his prior actions. Listen, we were just messing around as all, and you were a disgrace to our village, Kankuro. The red-headed boy identified as Gaara stated coldly. Now shut up, or I'll kill you. Meanwhile in Kurigakure, an auburn-haired beauty sneezed, interrupting her daydream about a certain blonde Hanyu, causing her to scowl. Either Naruto-kun is thinking about me, or someone stole my line. She mentally pondered. Well, Naruto-kun is allowed to fantasize about me, he is my fiancé after all. But if I find that someone stole my line, I will melt their balls off. Back in Konoha, Gaara felt a foreign sensation as a slight shiver traveled up his spine, prompting him to discreetly create a sand barrier around his crotch area, unnoticed to those around him. Mentally shaking off the strange experience, the raccoon-eyed boy turned his attention towards his fellow Suna shinobi with a glare. It annoys me that you'd lose control in a quarrel with children. The red-headed Suna nin stated coldly. Have you forgotten why we came here? But Gaara, they started it. Kankuro attempted to defend himself. The little shrimp slammed into me. Kankuro, shut up. Gaara stated icily once more, though oddly enough didn't finish with the threat of death like he did the last time. You're right, Gaara. The blade-clad, makeup-wearing Suna nin replied nervously. I was out of line. We're sorry Gaara, Temari said, equally afraid of the red-headed boy. Sorry for my team's actions. Gaara sighed, turning his attention to the Konoha nin. I am Gaara of the Sand, Suna Genin here for the Chunin exams. Tenten Higurashi, weapons mistress of Konoha. The bun-haired girl introduced herself with a slight bow, though never took her eyes off of the three Suna nin. Also partaking in the Chunin exams. Sakura Haruno, also participating in the exams. The Pinkett stated. Naruto Uzumaki, the Shadow Fox. The blonde Hanyu grinned. And yes, I am also in the exams. You should ignore these weaklings. I'm the only one you need to concern yourself with. The Uchiha sneered, causing the group to turn their attention towards him. Sasuke Uchiha, whatever. Temari rolled her eyes at the raven-haired teen's antics. While she would say the raven-haired boy was cute, his attitude was a big turn-off. The blonde one though, not only was he cute, but he had a much warmer personality that seemed to make him easy to open up to. I wonder when all of this is over, if I could probably talk him into taking me on a date. He is part of the CRA after all. Kankuro watched as his sister developed a light blush when she looked at the blonde Konoha nin, grinning slightly to himself about the amount of blackmail material he had just acquired. However, Sasuke had also seen the blush and had other, far more selfish thoughts. If you prove yourself to be strong, woman, you'll be given the honor to bear my children, the Uchiha arrogantly stated, his eyes leveling on Temari. He then turned his eyes towards the bun-haired girl. The same goes for you. At this, both Temari and Tenten curled their lips in disgust, appalled by the boy's proclamation as he walked away from the group, feeling he had said his piece. The Uchiha's statement didn't sit well with the others present either, as Gaara made a silent vow to destroy the Uchiha. Even Konohamaru had a face of disgust at the boy's display of arrogance. Temari, Kankuro, Gaara called out, catching both his teammates' attention. We're leaving. Nodding, both of the Suna nin began to make their way towards the academy. However, the red-headed boy remained, staring at Naruto, a sadistic smile spreading across his face. You are interesting, Gaara commented, the psychotic grin never leaving his face. Mother is intrigued by you, and she really wants your blood. Naruto stood there, a bit confused at the redhead's words. Not the fact that the Suna boy had threatened to kill him, he was used to such threats, but by the fact that he referred to his mother. Shukaku was a male, right? The blonde mentally inquired to his vixen. Yeah, only myself and my sister, Matabi are the only girls from all the Biju. Ari replied, equally confused as to why her brother's container was referring to him as his mother. So, I don't know why he is having his container call him mother. Questions for later, I suppose. Naruto mentally sighed, though he did recall one other thing about the red-headed Jinchuriki. At any rate, I am going to need to fix his seal. It already looked weak and about to break at any moment. Guess I'll see you guys later. Tenten commented. It was nice to meet you both. Naruto-san, Sakura-san. Both Hanyus watched as the weapons mistress took off towards the academy, no doubt to meet up with her team, before Naruto turned his attention to Konohamaru, whom was still standing where he had landed on his rear after the Sunanin had dropped him. Naruto-san, the young boy began. You want to know about Sasuke, don't you? Naruto finished for the boy, picking up on the young boy's thoughts of what he had just witnessed, earning a nod in confirmation. In short, Sasuke is the product of taking shortcuts. While he does have a natural talent, he has been given everything he has desired as no one has ever told him no. As such, he feels that anything he wants, whether it be a jutsu, a weapon, or even a person, should belong to him. Simply because he wants it. Is this what you meant when you said that there are no shortcuts? Konohamaru inquired, remembering the blonde's words months prior. At the time, his private tutor had told him to ignore the boy's words, and that Naruto was nothing but a delinquent that nobody loved or cared for. Now, he could see that not only was there people who loved him and cared for him, but that the blonde was also a highly skilled shinobi for his age. Considering the way he handled the large bully, and how he stared down the red-headed boy without so much as blinking. Mostly, the blonde nodded, but also because there is nothing in life that is free. Everything you want or desire, or even need comes at a price. Be it of monetary value, emotional or physical. I think I understand, the young boy replied, as he mulled over the blonde's words. From here on out, I will train hard and earn my spot as Hokage someday. I look forward to seeing the results. Naruto chuckled at the boy's enthusiasm, before turning to Sakura. Well, shall we? Let's. The pinkett grinned as she grabbed hold of the blonde's hand as the two departed in the direction of the academy. Seemingly unaware that a pair of eyes were watching them. Iruka, the scarred Chunin followed after the two remaining members of Team 7, having just witnessed their exchange with the three foreign genin from Sunagaku. Iruka had to admit that he was impressed with how his surrogate brother had handled the three Sunanin. Able to de-escalate the situation before it escalated further. What had surprised him further was learning that his own teammate was one of his girlfriends. While he knew that Naruto had submitted himself into the Clan Restoration Act, he was unaware of all the girls involved with the blonde, and last he recalled, the Haruno girl was head over heels for the Uchiha boy. He momentarily pondered what could have led to the girl switching her focus from one boy to the other. Though he had to admit that it was a change for the better. It seemed as if Naruto had managed to get the girl off her diets and take her kunoichi career far more seriously, as she appeared to have developed some muscle mass. Not to mention her posture was one of self-confidence, something she severely lacked during the academy. Still, with those two together, I know exactly how I can test him. Iruka thought to himself before he disappeared from his position, hoping to catch the two of them off guard before they reached the academy. Getting into position a few meters ahead of the duo, Iruka ensured his disguise was in place, posing as a rogue Iwa nin with a vendetta against the boy's father. He watched as the blonde leaned over and whispered something in the ear of his pink-haired teammate and lover, causing her to giggle slightly before he made his move. With the speed and accuracy of years of training, Iruka had effortlessly dropped behind Sakura and grabbed hold of her to retrain her movements while he brought a kunai up to her throat in a threatening gesture. This prompted Naruto to turn and look at their assailant, an irate expression on his face. Clearly not pleased that someone was threatening his mate in such a fashion. Now, this is what you're going to do, boy, Iruka instructed, disguising his voice via a seal on his throat. You are going to bring all of your father's scrolls to the top of the Hokage monument. And if I don't? Naruto inquired in an eerily calm voice, which kind of shook Iruka. Then I will just have to spill this pretty little thing's blood all over the ground. The disguised Iruka threatened, further implying the point by bringing the kunai closer to the girl's neck. Unseen to him though, his would-be hostage had a bored expression on her face. She knew she was in no real danger as she was well aware that any injury he may give her would be nothing, as her Hanyu physiology would heal any injury she may receive. I have a better idea. The blonde spoke, his voice still holding the cold as steel tone. You're going to let her go, and I may let you walk away with most of your limbs attached. I don't think you quite understand the situation you are in. So let me enlighten you, boy. Uruka growled. However, he didn't get a chance to react as suddenly his hostage disappeared from his grasp, literally falling within the shadow below them. At the same time, Naruto had dropped into his own shadow, and within the blink of an eye, the blonde had rocketed out of the shadow beneath Uruka, whereas Sakura had re-emerged in the spot where Naruto had once been standing. Connecting with the poor Chunon's jaw with a powerful impact, lifting the man off of his feet by nearly half a meter. However, the blonde's assault was not over just yet, as he rounded in mid-air and brought a sharp kick into the man's sternum, sending him flying back into the wall with enough force to crack the concrete. With his vision all blurry, Uruka could barely make out the blonde that was now stalking towards him. Struggling slightly, he lifted off his mask that had concealed his face and deactivated the seal that was on his throat, returning his voice to normal. Wait, it's me. He gasped out, trying to catch his breath. It's me, Naruto. I know, Uruka-sensei. The blonde grinned mischievously. I actually knew the entire time. This caused the scarred Chunin to freeze in shock. If what the blonde genin said was true, he knew it was him the entire time, and still allowed it to play out. If you knew it was me, then why did you attack me like that? Uruka inquired, casting a glare at the young Hanyu. And furthermore, how did you know it was me? In order, you threatened my mate. My pride and her honor would not allow that to stand. So you had to be punished. You should be thankful I held back. Naruto stated, the grin never leaving his face. As for how I knew it was you, aside from your scent, I picked up your chakra signature when we were talking with the Sunanin. Uruka could only allow his jaw to drop, having been informed that the young blonde had had him pegged pretty much as soon as he came into the area. Making the instructor wonder just how good the boy's sensory abilities were. Anyways, as fun as it's been, Uruka-sensei, we really need to get to the academy before the exams start. The blonde stated as he began walking away, with Sakura falling in step alongside him. Catch y'all later. Uruka let out a small groan in pain as he watched the two disappear down the road. Leaning back on the concrete wall, he reluctantly had to admit that the boy he saw as a younger brother was more than ready for the exams before him. As he lay there, a shadow loomed over him. I take it he passed your test, Uruka-san. Academy. As the two Hanyus approached the academy entrance, they were greeted with a disgruntled Uchiha waiting for them. Seeing the two arrived, the brooding Avenger kicked off the post he was leaning against and made his way towards the two, all the while glaring at the blonde. About time you two showed up, he remarked with a sneer. I've been waiting for nearly an hour. First off, you've only been here 20 minutes, at max. So stop being such a drama queen, Naruto pointed out. Secondly, you have no choice but to wait for us, since the exams require the entire team. Whatever, let's just go already, Sasuke stated, turning towards the academy entrance. We've wasted enough time. Well, he seems to be in a good mood, the blonde commented, earning a giggle from his pink-haired mate. But it seems he has it out for you more than usual today, Sakura commented, noticing the increase of glares directed at the blonde Hanyu during each encounter. He ran into Izumi-chan and I while we were returning from our date, Naruto informed her, made some disparaging remarks about her and the usual, you should submit to me and redeem yourself, tirade. Izumi-chan shut him up quickly though, when she said she renounced her Uchiha heritage and stated she would proudly take up the Uzumaki name. Ah, so that's why he is in such a lovely mood. The Pinkett chuckled. Well, let us be off, Naruto stated, his royal duck will be upset if we don't make haste. This of course earned another giggle from his pink-haired mate. Entering the academy, they were greeted with a swarm of participants for the exams. Some of which were just standing around and talking with their teams, while others were attempting and in most cases, failing, to intimidate other teams. Though it wasn't missed to the two Hanyu that a number of the male participants were leering at Sakura with lust-filled eyes, though both shrugged it off, knowing full well that a majority of the teams wouldn't even make it to the end. Moving through the crowd of genin, the trio went up the first flight of steps, only to be greeted with an even larger crowd surrounding a single door, labeled 301, with two genin seemingly standing guard at said door, preventing others from entering the room. This was further punctuated when one of the genin guarding the door delivered a brutal blow to a green-suited boy with a bowl-cut hairstyle, sending him skidding across the floor. Is someone as talentless as you really planning to take the Chunin exams? Why bother? The genin with messy brown hair stated condescendingly. Bunch of wet behind the ears snot noses. You said it, his partner smirked. Please just let us in, a familiar bun-haired girl pleaded, approaching the two guarding the door. Naruto narrowed his eyes slightly as he watched the genin with the messy hair. The blonde Hanyu could see his muscles tense ever so slightly, showing the telltale sign that he was about to attack the girl approaching him. In the blink of an eye, it appeared as if the blonde Hanyu had disappeared from sight, only to reappear in between the bun-haired girl and the genin. Blocking a kick aimed at the girl's head, earning a gasp in shock from the girl, and a grunt of annoyance from her would-be attacker. Now, that wasn't very nice, Naruto stated while still gripping the boy's shin before roughly pushing it away, causing the boy to stagger slightly before regaining his balance. He then turned and smiled to the bun-haired girl. Hey Kuma Haim. Tenten couldn't help but to blush at the blonde's nickname for her, Bear Princess. Namely because it was different from the usual, Panda, nicknames she was usually stuck with. Giving her a growing hatred for the beast. Good to see you, Naruto-san. She bowed slightly, hoping to hide her blush. Now, why would you attack a fellow Konoha genin? The blonde inquired, turning his attention back towards the two genin blocking the door. You misunderstand, the messy-haired genin stated. We're just trying to spare you is all. His partner finished for him. The Chunin exams are incredibly difficult. The messy-haired one continued. We should know, we've failed it 3 times so far. There are those who have made it, only to immediately give up being a shinobi afterwards. The other one stated. Others ended up being crippled and some reduced to nothing more than mere vegetables. And these are only the ones who have survived. This earned a chorus of murmuring echoing through the crowd of genin hopefuls. Many of which were beginning to doubt their resolve and their ability to complete the exams. Besides that, Chunin are cell commanders. They lead their units. The messy-haired boy continued his lecture. The responsibilities for failed missions and dead shinobi rest firmly on their shoulders. And you little punks have the nerve to think you are ready for this. The other snorted. Once again, a second chorus of murmuring could be heard flowing through the crowd. However, it was ended when the sound of a single individual slowly clapping interrupted their thoughts as the crowd focused on the blonde genin in front of the 2 guards. Impressive little speech there, Kotetsu. Naruto commented with a smirk as the identified Kotetsu's jaw hit the floor. You did good too, Izumo, though I gotta say, your henges make you both look uglier than usual. How the hell did you know it was us? Both exclaimed, earning a chuckle from the blonde. You can change your appearance, but you can't change your laziness. The blonde chuckled playfully. Both of you were standing in the same posture you two always stand in at the main gates. Both of the eternal gate guards allowed their henges to drop, as they lowered their head in shame for being outed so easily by a mere genin. Whatever. A voice spoke up from the back crowd as a figure roughly pushed his way through. Just drop this pathetic genjutsu. I have business on the 3rd floor. You're an idiot. Sakura sighed as she approached where Naruto was standing. That was to weed out those truly not ready for the exams. Now there will be countless more competition going forward. Good, more to witness an Uchiha elite as I dominate these exams. Sasuke smirked arrogantly, prompting both Naruto and Sakura to shake their head in disappointment at their teammates' antics. Since their little setup had been exposed, but of the Chunin that had been disguised as genin lifted their genjutsu, revealing the flight of steps that lead to the next floor. Without saying a word, the lone Uchiha brushed past the two and ascended the stairs, not bothering to see if his teammates were following or not. Both Hanyus were about to follow after their teammate when a voice called out to them, or rather, to Sakura. You are Sakura, aren't you? The bowl-haired boy said, approaching the two. My name is Rock Lee. Would you like to go out with me? I'll protect you with my life. Wah! The pinkett exclaimed in confusion, as the boy's proposal had literally come out of nowhere. I am going to have to respectfully decline Lee-san, as I already have a mate. Hearing this, the green-clad boy looked to the blonde that stood next to her before allowing his eyes to travel down, seeing the two holding hands. Seeing this, a fire of determination roared to life in the boy's eyes as he turned fully towards Naruto. I challenge you for Sakura's hand. Rock Lee exclaimed exuberantly, flashing his sensei's trademark smile. I decline, Naruto simply stated, though there was an undertone of irritation in his voice at the unintentional insinuation that his mate was a mere prize to be won. Because Sakura-chan is not some prize to be won, like a trinket at a street festival. She is a strong-willed kunoichi with her own free will. At this, Lee realized how his words sounded and began to profusely apologize to the pinkett and the blonde before him. Both of which shrugged it off with a light warning to think before he speaks in the future. Of course, this earned the duo a spiel of various challenges the green-clad genin would do to atone for his mistake. Meanwhile, Tenten's other teammate glared at the blonde with intense hatred. To him, Naruto was the sole reason that both Hinata and Hanabi had rebelled against the clan elders' teachings and had forsaken their clan's proud traditions. Silently, the Hyuga prodigy seethed at the blonde as he watched the duo ascend the flight of steps. Something wrong, Neji? Tenten inquired, seeing the look that washed over her teammate's face. Nothing, we're wasting time, he commented as he began to make his way up the stairs. Just you wait, Naruto Uzumaki. I will end you and bring honor back to the Hyuga clan. Team 7. The trio that made up Team 7 proceeded to make their way along the hallway towards the real room that the tests were to begin in. Though to their surprise, they saw Kakashi leaning against the wall, reading the next volume of Demon Heart, and by the looks of it, it was almost finished with it. This of course prompted both Naruto and Sakura to smirk knowingly. Good to see you all made it, he lazily commented, not looking up from his book. It would have been a shame if one of you decided not to come, or attempted to do this on your own. What do you mean? Sasuke asked. It's rather simple, the silver-haired Jonin stated as he closed the book, looking over his team. This exam is designed for 3-man teams. As such, if a full team is not present, they would not be allowed to partake in the exams. At this, both Sakura and Naruto couldn't help but smile at this. Both had a suspicion that something like this would be involved with the exams. Why else would entry into the exams require not only the team's sensei to sponsor them, but also require all 3 team members to submit their own forms? Anyways, I wish you 3 the best of luck. Kakashi gave his trademark eye smile. And look out for one another. Don't worry Tada-sensei. Sakura grinned. We got this. Naruto finished. Sasuke merely gave his typical grunt in response as he set off towards the exam room, with the other 2 following behind him. However, Naruto briefly stopped and reached into his jacket. Hey, Tada-sensei. Naruto called out as he tossed the item he just removed from his jacket towards the silver-haired Jonin. Catch. Kakashi caught the item in question and took a moment to examine it before he smirked, as he looked over the cover of the 3rd volume of the Demon Heart books. I wonder why he had a spare copy. The silver-haired Jonin mentally questioned as he watched his 3 students disappear through the large doors of the examination room. So there I was. Hundreds of bandits and enemy shinobi had surrounded my comrades and I. Shino had fought bravely, taking out a few of the bandits before they had finally overwhelmed him and knocked him out. Kurenai-sensei, Hinata-chan, and Sakura were all huddled in the corner of the campsite, as dozens of bandits closed in on them. It was clear as to what these pathetic fools intended to do with these fine ladies and my destined mate. To my right, the blonde Dobi was in a fetal position, crying his eyes out. Too scared to do anything. A really pathetic sight. Seeing this, I knew what had to be done and that I was the only one who could do it. Looking up at the full moon, I closed my eyes and allowed my inner beast to take form. A secret I never told anyone about, not even my own family. That when I was young, the divine feral being known as Fenrir had chosen me to be her avatar on the mortal earth, and later to be her mate in the afterlife. So I allowed my feral side to come out, my eyes sharpening, my teeth turning into fangs and my fingernails turning into claws. All to dispense justice on those that would threaten my pack. With a bestial roar, I launched forward and began to swing wildly in every direction, cleaving the scum in half with each blow from my powerful arms. As I tore through the sea of bandits, body parts were strewn left and right, littering the ground with blood and gore. Screams of pain and agony erupted from my enemies as I cut through them, until I finally reached my destination. Panting heavily, I stood before my dear sweet mate in my bestial form, my claws dripping with blood from my enemies. I watched as their eyes combed over my inhuman body, fearing rising up within as I worried whether or not they would accept this side of me. However, as I gazed down at the 3 beauties before me, I saw it in their eyes. The complete look of awe and admiration, and above all, acceptance. Hiba, my destined mate stammered, clearly entranced by my strong alpha appearance. Hinata-chan, the blonde dope called out as he rushed to her side, grasping her in a hug. Are you all right? Seeing this, I couldn't stop myself from growling in displeasure of this weak fool holding my destined mate. However, what happened next had surprised me. My dear sweet Hinata had pushed the idiot off her, and glared at him. Don't you dare touch me. She scowled at the shocked blonde Dobi. Be you but Hinata-chan. The weak fool stuttered. Shut up, Dobi. My precious little flower sneered. How could I ever love someone as weak as you? I couldn't help but to smirk at her words. To even further prove her point, she got up from her sitting position and walked over to me, wrapping her arms around my strong left arm, leaning her head on my shoulder. It is clear now that Kiba-kun is an alpha male and deserves my love and loyalty. Hinata proclaimed. Hinata-chan is right. Sakura spoke up, taking my right arm, mirroring Hinata's actions of leaning her head on my shoulder. You are nothing but a pathetic loser, but Kiba-kun is strong and powerful. Grinning, I looked down at the blonde doby who was now crying in shame due to the beautiful angels insulting him. However, despite how weak and pathetic he was, I couldn't allow this to go on. After all, the doby was still part of my pack, and as a true alpha, I had to look out for all members of my pack, even the weak ones. Ladies, please do not blame him. I spoke, catching the two lovely ladies' attention, both of which swooned at the sound of my rich, baritone voice. After all, it is hard to compete with an alpha such as me. You're right, Kiba-kun, Hinata stated, snuggling onto my arm. No one can compete with you. Still, Kurenai-sensei commented as she approached me, swaying her lovely hips from side to side in a sensual manner. I will need to report to Hokage-sama about his failure to act, which may have him stripped of being a shinobi. It is probably best that way, I replied with a sigh. So, Kiba-kun, Sakura smirked. How about all three of us thank you for your bravery and opening our eyes, allowing us to see what a true alpha is. And that's exactly what happened. Kiba grinned as he had finished his tale of how his first kill went. All the while, the group of Konoha genin had confused looks on their faces, whilst Hinata had her nose buried in the book she was reading, seemingly ignoring what was being said before she cast her gaze upwards, and peered at the group of genin whom were now gawking at the Inuzuka boy, doubt evident on their faces. He forgot to mention what happened afterwards. The Hyuga heiress commented with a smirk. What happened after? Kiba asked, a little confused. You know, where I took you to my home, striped you down and blindfolded you before I tied you to my bed. She grinned even more, earning a perverted look from the feral boy as he nodded his head in agreement with what she was saying. Oh yeah, that part, he replied, wiping the drool from his mouth. And then I put on my 12-inch strap-on and mounted you well into the morning hours. She finished with a sadistic smirk as she watched all the color drain from his face. Meanwhile the group of genin began to burst out laughing at the poor boy's misfortune. And you loved every minute of it. Hinata finished in a sing-song voice, completely shattering the poor boy's masculinity in front of everyone. While it is natural for one with a fragile ego to exaggerate events, they usually keep it within the realm of what is logically possible. Shino commented in his monotone voice, causing the poor feral boy to sulk even further. Besides, I do not think Kurenai-sensei would appreciate you depicting her in such a manner. Hearing this, the feral boy felt a lump form in the back of his throat. In the boy's delusional fantasy, he had completely forgotten that his sensei was a staunch opposition against anything perverted in nature. Something she had made very clear to the rest of his team when she had trapped him in a genjutsu after he introduced himself in his dream to have, in his own words, dozens of hot bitches to surround himself with. His sensei's retribution had been swift and severe. Kiba unconsciously shivered at the memory, not wanting to relive the details of the genjutsu ever again. Damn, and here I thought I was going to be given the privilege of becoming your slave. A voice sounded from behind the Inuzuka, causing the feral boy to silently groan, turning to face none other than Naruto and the rest of Team 7, with the aforementioned blonde smirking. Fortunately for the young Inuzuka, all the attention had shifted from him as a loud squeal echoed throughout the room. Sasuke-kun, a platinum blonde girl exclaimed as she leapt on the back of the lone Uchiha. Following behind her were her two teammates, Shikamaru and Choji. Where have you been, cutie? When I heard your team was going to participate in the exams. She grinned, attempting to snuggle into him as the raven-haired boy leaned further away from her. I could hardly wait. It's so exciting to see you again after all of this time. While this was a usual scene most of the Konoha genin were used to, many felt that something was missing. Slowly, the group of Konoha hopefuls cast their eyes over to the blonde girl's rival, only to find her merely frowning at the scene playing out before her before turning her attention back to her blonde teammate. Get off me, Ino. Sasuke grunted as he roughly pushed the blonde girl off of his back, causing her to stumble slightly. It wasn't missed that the platinum blonde girl looked hurt by the boy's rejection, but she quickly shook it away before turning her attention to her rival. Narrowing her eyes as she watched the pinkett converse with Naruto, all while laughing and giggling in response to what the whiskered teen would tell her. To the blonde girl's shock, Hinata had joined the duo, giving Sakura a welcoming hug, before turning and wrapping her arms around Naruto's neck and leaning in, giving him a heated kiss before snuggling into the blonde boy's arms. "Oi, forehead," Ino called out, snapping out of her shock as she approached the trio, all of whom had turned their attention to her. "What do you want, Ino pig?" The pinkett grinned, using her former rival's nickname. Ino was silent for a handful of seconds, a little caught off guard, as the usual spiteful tone of the insulting name wasn't there. Instead it felt more playful than anything else. Pushing those thoughts away, she focused on the pink-haired Kunoichi. Noting that her former best friend now stood a bit more confident, not to mention the black lowlights that streaked her bubblegum pink hair, very similar to how Naruto's hair color was. "I need to speak with you," the blonde girl stated before grabbing the pinkett by the wrist and leading her away into a corner of the room that was empty. Once Ino was satisfied that they were a comfortable distance away from any prying ears, she turned and faced Sakura. "All right, spill it, forehead." "Spill what exactly?" Sakura quirked an eyebrow. "What the hell is going on between you and Naruto Baka?" Ino pressed, narrowing her eyes. Though she did not notice Sakura clenching her fist at the insult directed at her mate. "Last time I saw you, you were leaving his apartment. And now you've even started dyeing your hair to make it look like his." "Calm down, Sakura," Ino commented. "Remember, she doesn't know yet. I will ask you not to refer to my mate in such a manner," Sakura stated with a clipped tone, causing a slight shiver to travel down the blonde girl's spine. However, one thing did stick out the young Yamanaka, and that was the fact that Sakura referred to Naruto as her mate, not boyfriend. This further confused the blonde, as she recalled just moments ago that Hinata had been kissing the Uzumaki boy. As for the rest, the pinkett continued, crossing her arms over her chest. "I simply grew up." "What do you mean, grew up?" Ino inquired. "And what do you mean, mate?" "Both are exactly as they sound, Ino," Sakura replied with a smile. "During my first mission outside of the village, not only did I get my first real taste of what it is to be a kunoichi, but I also got to learn just what kind of person Naruto-kun really is." "But Hinata, Naruto-kun is the last of his clans," the pinkett interrupted, knowing full well what the blonde was going to say. "As such, he is in the Clan Restoration Act, meaning he is required to take multiple wives to build his clans back up." "Last of his clan? Wait, that means Sasuke-kun could be in it as well," Ino exclaimed excitedly, only to see the pinkett shaking her head. "No. Sasuke was in it a few months back," Sakura informed her, "but because he didn't get the girls he wanted, he tossed a fit and got himself removed from the program. And if you don't believe me, you can ask Hokage-sama yourself." What girls did he want?" Ino asked, a little disheartened by the fact that the brooding Uchiha was no longer in the program. "He demanded for Hana Inuzuka, Hanabi Hyuga, and Haku." Sakura frowned. "Even worse, he wanted Haku's chakra to be sealed, supposedly for her own protection." "What? Why?" Ino blinked, finding it odd that he would request someone's chakra to be sealed. "And why wouldn't the girls want to be with Sasuke-kun?" Sakura could only shake her head at the blonde's antics, though she did feel a sting of embarrassment as she took in her former rival's actions. "Please tell me I wasn't that bad," she mentally begged. "Actually, you were worse," Ino pointed out hesitantly. "Whereas Ino would only yell at others for insulting the bastard, you were a bit more physical. Sadly, your main target was Naruto-kun." Sakura couldn't help but to mentally grimace at that reminder. "You really don't want to know why he wanted Haku-chan's chakra sealed?" the pinkett replied, clenching her fist tightly at the memory. "I will just say that Haku-chan had embarrassed him in Nami no Kuni. As for the girls, well," Sakura couldn't help but blush. "They were kind of already with Naruto-kun, well, except Hanabi, she was sort of a last-minute thing." It took nearly a full minute for Ino to completely comprehend and process what she had just been told. Though the main thing that stuck out was that Naruto, the orange-wearing idiot all throughout the academy years, had not one or two, but 6 girlfriends at once, since she had already known about the relationship between the blonde and the snake mistress of the village. Even further, the girls the blonde teen was involved with were not just random kunoichi or civilians, but with the exception of Sakura, Haku, and Anko, were members of prominent clans. "How the hell did this all happen?" Ino exclaimed, trying to wrap her head around this bit of information. "Well," Sakura couldn't help but grin. "Perhaps you should try and get to know Naruto-kun better and see for yourself." Ino could only gawk at the pinkett. But what about Sasuke-kun? I'll tell you the same thing Naruto-kun told me. Sakura shrugged. Pursue him if you want, just don't endanger yourself in doing so. I just hope you don't learn what kind of person Sasuke is the same way I did. Hearing this, Ino frowned. From the sounds of things, something had happened between Sakura and Sasuke. Something bad. However, before she could question it, a loud commotion drew the two girls' attention over to where their teams were. Just in time to see three Oto shinobi attack a silver-haired Konoha genin with glasses that neither had seen before. We should probably see what that is about, Sakura commented as she proceeded to return to her team's location, mainly to Naruto's side, leaving Ino behind to ponder their discussion. What happened between Forehead and Sasuke-kun that she has completely given up on him? She thought, moments earlier, would you guys do us all a favor and just shut up? A silver-haired teenage boy with glasses said as he approached the noisy group of genins. Who the hell are you? Hiba asked demanded. Name's Kabuto. The now identified Kabuto briefly introduced himself before he cast his gaze over the group of genins before him. You kids need to open your eyes. And why's that? The Inuzuka inquired with a growl. The new arrival said nothing, and merely gestured at a group of shinobi, wearing the Imagakure headband. All of which were glowering at the rookies, causing the feral boy to flinch slightly under their stare. Everyone's on edge waiting to take the exam. Kabuto explained. I wanted to give you a heads up before someone snaps and beats the crap out of you, but it's probably unavoidable. Like all rookies, you think you know everything. I remember what it was like. This earned a series of frowns from the newly dubbed rookie group. So you're saying this is your second time attempting the exams? Tenten asked. Seventh actually. The silver-haired bespectacled teen chuckled. Twice a year for 4 years now. Wow, you must suck then. Hiba commented with a scoff. Maybe. Kabuto shrugged, ignoring the insult. Or maybe these exams are much harder than you think. If you've been through this 7 times already, you should have some helpful advice for us rookies, right? Naruto commented with a slight grin. Suppose I could. The silver-haired teen replied with a grin of his own, pulling out a deck of what appeared to be playing cards. What are those? Choji inquired. These little babies are known as shinobi skill cards. Kabuto gave a brief explanation. To put it simply, they contain information about the skills we use. Transformed into symbols and burned into the cards using chakra. It's taken me 4 years to collect all of the intelligence needed for this exam. He continued. In all, there are over 200 cards. Do you also have dossier cards? Sasuke asked as he approached the bespectacled teen. Someone participating you have a particular interest in? Kabuto grinned. Gaara from Sunagakure, Rock Lee of Konoha, and Naruto Uzumaki of Konoha. The raven-haired boy listed off the names, catching the group's attention, as Naruto narrowed his eyes at the Uchiha and the silver-haired teen. I don't trust this Kabuto, Naruto-kun. Ari commented with a growl in the back of his mind. I agree, he smells like snakes. The blonde replied mentally. Just like Mizuki Tem. Keep an eye on him. Mentally nodding, Naruto turned his full attention back to the cards just as Kabuto channeled some of his chakra into 3 separate cards. Before flipping one over and looking it over, reading the information that appeared on the back. Let's see here. Rock Lee of Konoha. Kabuto read off. He's a year older than you. Missions to date. His team has completed 20 D rank missions and 11 C rank missions. His team's sensei is Might Guy, and his taijutsu physical skills have grown exponentially over the past year. Though he has no other talents worth mentioning. Next is Gaara of the Sand from Sunagakure. Oh wow. He commented, giving an impressed whistle as he read over the card. No D rank missions, 8 C rank missions and 1 B rank mission. Not many rookies get B ranked assignments. Sadly, since he is from another country, I have less on him, but I do have one thing very interesting about him. He's come back from every mission completely unscratched. Lastly, we have Naruto Uzumaki. Kabuto said as he flipped over the last card. Also known as the Shadow Fox of Konoha, interesting alias. Member of the illustrious Team 7, under Kakashi Hatake. Their team has completed 12 D rank missions, 1 B rank mission, and 2 A rank missions. Silence and shock echoed throughout the group at the revelation of the team's mission accomplishments. While it was extremely rare to get a B rank mission as a genin, it was nearly unheard of to receive an A- rank mission, let alone 2. And to have completed them. Wow, Kabuto commented, clearly impressed and secretly worried. Anyways, during the academy he was considered the dead last of his class, however field reports completely contradict that assessment. Furthermore, he seems to have a unique bloodline that gives him limited power over the darkness element and shadows. Lastly, he's the last of 2 clans, the Uzumaki and one other that is not known. Also seems like he has already got a jump start on rebuilding his clans, with his fiancé's being. Kabuto was cut off as the card he was reading from began to crumple in on itself as dark energy surrounded it. Looking up, he could see Naruto glaring down at him. "They don't need to know about my personal life." The blonde growled, "And awfully suspicious that you would have such detailed information on me, considering this is my first time taking the exams." "Hey, sorry about that my friend." The silver-haired teen attempted to placate the upset Hanyu. "And I may have bribed a few higher-ranked shinobi for some additional information. Which could be considered borderline treason, since you've been friendly with this information with foreign shinobi present," Naruto pointed out, causing the bespectacled teen to gulp in fear. "So, anything else you can tell us?" Shikamaru asked, allowing the silver-haired teen to change the direction of the topic. "Not really, other than a new village has entered this year's exams." Kabuto shrugged, putting his cards away. "Some small backwater village called Otogakure. I don't think they will be much of a threat." "Hey, whatever bring them all on," Hiba exclaimed. "I'll show everyone what a true alpha is." At this, nearly all of the Konoha group resisted the urge to groan at the feral boy's ignorance. Looking as most of the room was now glaring at the Konoha group, signifying that the Inuzuka boy had made them all targets. However, unknown to most of the Konoha group, a trio of shinobi were swiftly making their way through the grumbling crowd. Most of which were plotting to do horrible things to the Inuzuka boy once they got him alone. Though the trio of shinobi were after a different target as they flickered through the crowd before a bandaged individual leapt up from the crowd and came barreling down towards Kabuto. The mummified-looking Oto Genin took a swing at Kabuto, though the silver-haired teen seemed to have expected the attack and merely leaned back enough for the attack to merely pass in front of him. However, despite dodging the attack, the bespectacled teen's glasses shattered seemingly from nothing, much to the shock of the Konoha rookies. Though it didn't stop there, as Kabuto suddenly doubled over and emptied his stomach onto the floor. He used the sound to attack Kabuto, fitting for a genin from the village hidden in the sound. Naruto surmised with a slight grin, as his ears buzzed from the almost inaudible noise coming from the strange-looking device on the Oto genin's wrist, prompting him to use his chakra to protect his eardrums. Shifting his attention from the downed form of Kabuto, the blonde Hanyu gazed at the 3 Otogakure genin, taking in their appearances and sizing them up. To the left, was a male with spiky black hair, wearing an outfit that spelled out, "Death," on the front. In the center was the mummified genin that had attacked Kabuto, his head leaning to the side at an odd angle, and lastly, there was the sole female of the group. Said female seemed to feel his eyes upon her and turned to look at him. Naruto had to admit that she was pleasing to the eye. Despite her loose-fitting outfit, it was clear that she took her training seriously. Seeing her looking at him, Naruto couldn't help but to grin and wink at her, prompting her to lightly blush at the short exchange. "Add that to your cards," the spiky-haired Oto genin stated with a smirk. "Did I miss something?" Sakura asked as she took her spot next to her mate. Just the opening ceremonies." Naruto shrugged. "All right maggots, sit down and shut up." A loud voice called out from the front of the room, prompting all the occupants to turn their attention to the new arrivals at the front. The most prominent of the new arrivals was a largely built man with a scared face, and a bandana covering the top of his head. "Sorry to have kept you waiting." The scared man grinned. "My name is Ibiki Morino. I'm the proctor and chief examiner for the first part of the exam." Upon hearing his name, many of the genin gulped in fear, as the man had earned quite the reputation in torture and interrogation, as well as being a master at mind games. "You 3 of Otogakure," Ibiki singled out the 3 genin. "Attempt something like that one more time and you will be disqualified, understand?" "Sorry, it's our first exam and we got a little excited." The mummified genin commented with a slight chuckle. "As that's so," Ibiki grinned, sending a shiver down mostly everyone's spine. "Then it is high time someone laid down a few ground rules. From this point forward, there will be no fighting without the express permission of the examining officer. And even if that permission is granted, anything that endangers another applicant's life is strictly forbidden. Any of you maggots break this rule will be immediately disqualified, no second chances." "Got it." So in other words, the spiky-haired Oto genin smirked. This is a test for girly men. Ignoring the Odo genin, the proctor proceeded to the front of the classroom, and stood in front of the chalkboard before turning around to face the participants. Before you entered the room, you were given a number. The proctor called out, "Find the seat that matches your number." After a few moments of scrambling, each of the applicants had found the seat that coincided with the number they were given upon entering the room. As luck would have it, Naruto had ended up next to Hinata, whilst Sakura was a bit further back in the next row. Once they were all seated, one of the chunin handed out papers to everyone. "Papers face down until I give the signal," Ibiki called out, prompting a few of the genin to slam their papers down. "Now listen up. There are a few big rules that pertain to this test. Rule number 1. Each of you starts with 10 points. Each question you get wrong, you lose a point. Rule number 2. This written test is still a team event. Passing or failing will be determined by the sum of the points held by all 3 team members. Therefore, the objective is for each team to have as few deductions as possible. Rule number 3. If during the course of the exam a candidate does anything out of the ordinary, in other words, anything that leads the proctors to determine that he or she has cheated, we subtract 2 points from each member of the cheater's team. With that said, you have 1 hour to complete this exam, starting now." A flurry of papers being flipped over echoed throughout the room as the applicants attempted to tackle the written questions. Though the first thing any of them noticed was that the questions on the paper were far more advanced than a mere genin could possibly hope to answer. Naruto couldn't help but smirk as he read over the questions. Glancing to his side, he could see that Hinata had already activated her Byakugan and seemingly had begun to copy the answers of the person just in front of her. "Well, suppose I should get my answers as well," he mentally commented, allowing his shadow to disconnect from him and completely disappear. As he did so, his shadow self lurked within what he dubbed the shadow world, allowing it to move through the room without detection, since it was technically an entirely different world. Taking a moment to look around the room, he found the 3 Odogakur genin, with 2 of them answering the questions, while the third and sole female of the group appeared to be in a bad mood over something. It appeared as if the 2 males of the team were purposely leaving her out of the silent communication that had going on between them. Though with the glint in both of their eyes, it was clear that they were no doubt planning to hold it over her head, in return for certain favors. Scowling at this, the dark clone set off to find someone to get the answers from. After a few minutes of searching, he found his target. Immediately, the dark clone gazed over the individual's answer and quickly jotted them down on a separate scroll, as well as a special message before rolling up the scroll and returning to the Odo girl's side. Allowing his hand to slip between worlds, he dropped the small piece of paper with the answers in front of her, causing her to jump slightly, not expecting for a piece of paper to literally appear out of nowhere. Its job done, the dark clone dismissed itself, giving Naruto its memories. The blonde couldn't help but smirk at his dark clone's actions, but overall, he approved of them. With the answers fresh in his mind, the blonde Hanyu quickly jotted down the 9 answers on the test before setting his pencil down and waited for the rest of the time to tick away. Meanwhile, a few rows behind him, a certain Odo Kunoichi couldn't help but to stare at the blonde whom had given her the answers. 1 hour later, as the minutes ticked away, more and more participants were removed from the exam. Either from being caught cheating, or goofing around. There had even been one fool that had actually attempted to strike on of the proctors that had called him out for cheating. The end result was not good and required the young genin to be taken to the hospital for the injuries he received, the rest of his time wisely opting to silently depart the room. Aside from that, Naruto was greatly amused and impressed with the ingenious ways many of the participants had taken to getting their answers. The weapons mistress, Tenten, had utilized wires and a mirror, which made the blonde Hanyu ponder how she was able to set it up without being caught. Gaara of the sand and utilized his sand to form a floating eyeball to get his answers, whereas Sasuke had used his Sharingan to copy the pencil movements of the person in front of him. "Alright maggots, time's up," Ibiki called out from the front of the room, earning a series of groans and sighs of relief. "Get ready for the 10th question, but, before I give out the final question, I am adding one more rule. The absolute rule. First, you must choose." Ibiki grinned in a sadistic manner. "Whether or not to accept the 10th question." "What?" Tamari exclaimed, slamming her hands down on the desk in front of her. "What do you mean choose? What happens if someone doesn't accept the question? If you reject the question, and don't even try to answer it, you'll lose all of your points immediately and fail," the proctor informed the participants. "Not to mention, Both of your teammates will fail right along with you. This earned a series of gasps from the remaining genin. None of them were too pleased at the prospect of failing if one of their own teammates decided to reject the question. However, Ibiki continued, if you try to answer the question, and answer incorrectly, you will never be permitted to apply for the Chunin exams ever again. Hearing this, all of the genin participants went deadly silent, as each of them pondered the alternative. Either give up and have a shot at it next time when they felt more confident, or risk it all in a gamble at the cost of losing any further chances of being promoted. A handful had made the choice to reject the question, much to their teammates' chagrin. All right, enough mind games, Scarface. Naruto stated with his fox-like grin. I know for a fact you don't have the authority to ensure none of these guys are allowed to take the exams again, so just give us the question already. Damn brat, Ibiki grunted, seeing as the blonde's words had steeled the rest of the occupants' nerves enough to feel confident in their ability to answer the final question. I can see what Anko sees in him, absolutely no fear. Damn brat wasn't even the least bit intimidated by me. Very well, listen up everyone. The proctor grinned. You've just passed the first exam. Wait, what do you mean passed? A nameless kunoichi questioned. What about the 10th question? There was no 10th question, beyond the whole, accept or reject, think. Ibiki laughed. Then why did we have to suffer through the other 9 questions? Tamari screamed out. While happy she passed the first exam, she was not happy that she had wasted a nerve-wracking hour on a pointless test. That was a total waste of our time. There was no waste, Ibiki commented, turning serious again. Those questions had a purpose. Their purpose was to test your skills at spying. Of course, if you were clumsy or too obvious, you failed. Saying this, Ibiki reached up and removed his bandana, earning a series of gasps from the genins as he exposed his scarred and mutilated scalp. Burn scars, punctures from where screws were used, and long slashes. All clear signs that the man before them had been captured and tortured before. The 10th question, however, simply put, was to see if you had the courage and fortitude to move forward or not. Ibiki explained as he secured his bandana to his head once more. There will be missions that will have you risk you and your team's lives for intel. Intel that could potentially save thousands of lives. In other words, sacrifice a few to save many. Naruto mused. However, the participants didn't have time to ponder the meaning behind the proctor's words as the window suddenly shattered and a black blur erupted in the front of the room with kunai flying out in 4 different directions. When the dust had settled, a lone figure stood in front of a black banner that read, "The sexy and engaged Anko Mitarashi Uzumaki, second proctor." All the while, Anko stood in front of the banner with a gleeful expression as her eyes met with Naruto's, whom couldn't help but chuckle as he realized that this was the big surprise she had in store for them. "All right Gakis, you can read right," Anko shouted out. "I'm the second proctor for the exams, Anko Mitarashi Uzumaki. Wait, Ibiki, you passed 26 teams. You must be getting soft. Blame your fiancé." The scarred man shrugged. "I would have scared away more if not for this brat. Oh well, I'll cut that number by half before the next test is done." The snake mistress grinned sadistically. "Cut us down by half." Ino gulped. "Ooh, I get charged just by thinking about it," Anko stated, her grin never leaving her face, which unnerved a few more of the participants. "I'll explain in detail as soon as we arrive at the next examination area, so follow me." Without waiting for a reply, Anko leapt out the window she had jumped in through, prompting a few of the more daring, like Naruto, Sakura, and Hinata to jump out behind her, while the others opted to take the steps, hoping they would be able to catch up to the crazed second proctor. After a few minutes of running through the village, the remaining participants found themselves in front of a massive forest, surrounded by a large chain-link fence, as if it were built to keep things inside the ominous-looking forest, instead of keeping others out. This was further perpetuated by the numerous sounds on the fencing that warning of death upon trespassing. "Welcome to the arena for the second exam, Training Ground 44. Anko stated as she gazed over the genin in front of her, enjoying the fear rolling off of them. Otherwise known as the Forest of Death.